Oh yeah, I didn't have time to throw it in. Urlacher.
Well, you timed
Urlacher.
that perfectly because we just started.
Yes!
Welcome, everybody. This is Discussions About Game of Thrones, and we've got a bunch of guests here today. That's Charlie, Eli, LaDonna, my mama, and Maester Payne. They're all going to introduce themselves in a second. If you have not seen these videos, we do reviews of the show, basically, but from the perspective of people who have read the books. So we know, at least partly, up to the 5th book, what's going to happen, and we're currently up to episode 7 of the 4th season of Game of Thrones, and this episode was called Mockingbird. So again, if you don't want predictions or spoilers, don't watch this video. But if you are in that situation where you shouldn't be watching this video, you can watch Charlie's videos or Maester Payne's videos. Those are actually spoilerific. You can watch Charlie's videos. And Eli, have you got videos?
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
You cannot watch Eli's videos. And my mom should have a video soon. All right. Introduce yourselves. Charlie?
Alrighty, so as James said, my name is CharlieInWesteros, and like he plugged my channel for me, you can find my spoiler-free videos at youtube.com/CharlieInWesteros. Also, I just want to say I went to the Game of Thrones exhibit in Toronto this past week, and it was pretty awesome stuff. I made a quick video of my little adventure there, so feel free to check it out. I apologize in advance if it's kind of shaky. That's what happens when you use an iPhone. So without further ado, that's me in a nutshell.
And if you want a link to his videos, it's in the description. That's a quick link.
Thanks.
Eli?
My name's Eli Knight. I actually don't have any videos of my own out yet. I'm planning on having a couple coming out, just general theorizing and talking about theories and validating or debunking theories that I've heard of. So without that, also, Charlie, I watched that little walkthrough video, and it was a blast. I loved it.
Thanks.
LaDonna, Mama?
Hi, I'm LaDonna, and I'm James's mother, and we started doing some videos maybe about a year ago, and we're just enjoying the heck out of it. Glad to have all these other nice folks with us, too.
And Maester Payne.
I am Maester Payne. I've only had about 2 hours sleep last night, so I'm very tired, so bear with me. I know I promised I'd be working on videos, and I have been. I got boatloads of notes, but I haven't put anything up yet, and I'm sorry to get there.
Nice. And as always, Charlie is being very kind to us all by permitting him, allowing us to force him to host. So he'll be hosting tonight.
It's no problem. I always enjoy it. But before, I guess, we get into discussing each scene this episode, of course, like I always say, we go by order of location. And the first scene is in King's Landing, so we'll talk about King's Landing first. But before we do that, I want to discuss the title of the episode first. And of course, the title was Mockingbird. Just before we all came on camera to you guys, we actually discussed it a little bit, and I think we all had some pretty interesting thoughts, or at least a number of us did. So if I could kind of just recap my own thoughts from my spoiler-free video and add a little bit more, I could just say, I guess, that, of course, Mockingbird, refers to Peter Baelish in this case, because, of course, that's the sigil of his house, and he has the little pendant, little Mockingbird pendant on his jacket. Now, of course, if we look at it in the context of Peter Baelish, we can see, Peter as a mockingbird who sings his sweet melodies to woo a lot of people before stabbing them in the back later on. Although I don't quite see the mockingbird connection in that sense, but I think James had a great thought on that I'll let you discuss. That I'll let you bring up when the time comes. My own thoughts on the mockingbird, of course, in this episode was that you could see it two ways. You could see the mockingbird as symbolized by something sweet and innocent, just like in the book To Kill a Mockingbird. That is, to kill something sweet and innocent. Or you could also perceive, this image of a mockingbird by breaking it down into two words, by seeing it as a mocking space bird or a bird who is mocking. And like I say in my own video, in the UK, a bird can be a derogatory slang term for, a woman or a female. And of course, if you look at it this way, a mockingbird, well, I think there's quite a few characters in this specific episode who could, I guess, fit that negative image and how they are portrayed. But just to add a slight layer on my own thoughts on the episode title, we could, just look at the mockingbird as something sweet and innocent and see that, pretty much none of the female characters this episode epitomize that, except for seemingly Sansa Stark in the very end. We could make an argument for a few other characters, and I would arguably make that for 2 or 3 others, but I will discuss that when the time comes when we get to their scenes. So that is my thoughts on the episode title. Anybody else care to share anything?
I'll do that. To me, Mockingbird is, I think it's apparent that it obviously learns from other birds. And that is clearly, to me, an emphasis on the teacher-student sort of idea. And every single person in the world is both a student and a teacher at every moment of their life. We're learning, and we're also affecting the world around us. That Arya and the Hound, we have watched them learn from each other. Arya tells the Hound, "Why wouldn't you steal? Man's got to have a code." And then later he steals. They both learn from each other. Even at the end of this, the last time we see them in this episode, I think it was the last time, he says, "You're learning." With Littlefinger and Sansa, they're obviously learning off of each other. And but there's also it's pretty much everybody. Oberyn's passion is to get a vengeance, which is a reflection of everything that's happened to him. He's learned how the world is, and he's learned how to interact with it instead of learning to fight. And now he's responding. I think it applies to absolutely everybody, and it comes back to bite you in your ass too. Tyrion thought when he said trial by combat that was he knew it was in his dad's face, but I'm sure he thought Bronn will fight or Jaime. I'll be fine. And it all backfires because he couldn't help but have his voice heard. And if I can end the Mockingbird part of my little spiel, Mockingbirds are jerks. They fight. They are territorial, just like blue jays. And the reason Mockingbirds learn other songs is it's either a territorial song, meaning that they do it to tell other birds screw off, or they learn it as a mating call, and it's either a call of another bird that pushes away birds or brings them. And if it brings them, then the Mockingbird takes that as an opportunity to chase them away. Well, Sansa's learning. Lysa's got bitten in her ass. Tyrion got hit. Arya is obviously going to have response to the Hound, but I think there's that aspect too. So, in summation, Mockingbird to me means the teacher-student aspect and the student coming back to hurt the teacher.
Very interesting, very interesting. LaDonna, did you have any thoughts?
There are several Native American Indian myths of the Mockingbird, and one of them, I can't remember what her name is. Hold on, I brought it up. And you can find this on Google, but it's a Mayan legend, and it's called How the Mockingbird Became the Best Singer. It talks about a little girl who had a nice voice, but she was in a position where she could not sing, and ultimately she becomes the best singer. And it says the moral of the legend is about ability, identity, and the pursuit of dreams. And I think that may deal with Sansa, if indeed she is the... You got noise, James. Move it around. But anyway, it talks about ability, identity, and pursuit of dreams, and I think that deals with Sansa being some kind of political speaker at the end, whether that means she's Queen of the North or she has to sing to save herself or people or someone else. That was one meaning I put on it.
I struggled with this one. I took the Mockingbird as the impersonation aspect, how they impersonate other animals. And I only found 3 instances of this, I think. Well, actually, maybe 4. But I like it the way James and Charlie have explained it. I struggled with the Mockingbird theme on my own, because it also ties into what I'm looking at this episode. Ties into what I said last episode about people trying to be other people. So I wanted to go someplace different, but it was sort of the same.
How about
the
you,
only
Eli?
thing that the only thing I would add is as we've done before, like we always generally put it that there are broader strokes when it comes to episode naming. This one, I didn't actually have that feeling. Well, I'm sure that it's there. I wasn't able to find it like Payne. I was kind of lost when looking for it. The only thing I did see that was fairly obvious to me was the play on Littlefinger, and just in the sense of Mockingbird, where, like James said, a Mockingbird where you use the call to draw in lesser prey. And that's why I think that we've seen earlier, I can't remember where it's exactly stated, but where he says something about your moves to let your enemy know what you're doing. And he said sometimes even make moves that look like they're against you in order to, because in that way, you know, your enemy could never see that coming. You know, it doesn't make any sense for your plan. And I think that is the Mockingjay thing. You know, that's the only thing I saw was him kind of drawing in, or, you know, the mocking of throwing out different, saying things under terms that obviously were not for his best interest for obvious reasons.
I think that's a good point. I also felt like we've seen Sansa take on a couple of different personas in her acting with Lysa and with Littlefinger.
Definitely.
I'm afraid I missed the bit of your presentation, Eli, but from the sound of things, I think we've all come up with pretty interesting thoughts on how we perceive the Mockingbird and its imagery in this episode, which is kind of neat, because usually we kind of more or less come to a similar conclusion in terms of how the episode title is meant to, you know, guide it. But this time I think there's a lot of different ways we could read into it, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, mine was just the obvious to the actual person who was the Mockingbird, which is all obvious, you know, Baelish.
Of course.
We also saw Arya mimic the Hound as far as wiping off that.
Yeah.
So I think there's some mimicry, repeating somebody as
kind of that. I'm sorry. Kind of that monkey see, monkey do type thing.
So, any other thoughts on the episode title, folks, or should we get in now? I'll take that as a resounding yes.
Go ahead.
Alrighty, so if we can just start off by talking about events in King's Landing. Things start off, of course, with Tyrion, and it's the events right after the infamous trial that we had at the end of the last episode. So in his cell, Tyrion is chastised by his brother Jaime for pretty much requesting a trial by combat, and as far as Jaime perceives, Tyrion basically throwing his life away. Tyrion also asks Jaime to be his champion, but Jaime declines due to his poor performance with his left hand, and so Tyrion then asks Jaime to find Bronn in order to ask him to be his champion. Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can really add in terms of my thoughts to this first scene, other than, oh, and of course we have Tyrion, you know, discuss his feelings about Shay and how he can't believe he fell for her, yada yada. And again, like I've always been repeating every episode review, I'm still having trouble accepting the fact that Shay would just so easily betray Tyrion. But you've heard my spiel on that one, so I'm not going to say anything more. I'll let you guys speak your thoughts on this scene for a change. Any takers?
All right.
James?
Just to start it off, I thought that Jaime and Tyrion, we really haven't got to see them together since the first episode, really. When they're at the you wound me. You know how much I love my family. So I really liked seeing them together. And Tyrion, I mean, it goes without saying he's a great actor, but the way he approached his brother, I thought was just well done. He spoke and used mannerisms he wouldn't have used otherwise. I thought that was beautiful. I loved him the way that they ended, because we get 3 scenes with Tyrion, and each of them have to do with a champion, him trying to ask for a champion. But with Jaime, he's kind of like, but wouldn't it be awesome to make our dad suffer? I liked that a whole lot. I loved the, but you're the golden child. And I also loved, they needed to have Jaime and Tyrion have that moment, because Jaime needs to realize not just that he loves his brother, but the shit his brother's been through that he has not. Everything Jaime's been through, he kind of put himself through, in a way. I mean, that's not entirely true. His father kind of put him in that situation. But when Jaime says, "Careful, I'm the only friend you've got," that was perfect. They only need one more scene with Jaime becoming fed up with both Tywin and Cersei. One scene of him fed up with them, and that's all we needed for him to leave to get on his journey, in my opinion. Yeah.
If I can add on to your thought just quickly, James, because we mentioned, of course, that Jaime was tricked into, I guess, reclaiming his rightful place as the head of the Lannister family at Casterly the Rock. How do you think they're going to address do you think they're going to address Jaime maybe changing his mind in terms of that situation?
He doesn't
before
have to.
Tywin dies, or that's what I was wondering. Do you think they're going to, have him say, because you, Tywin, you didn't keep your end of the bargain, in a sense, therefore I will not, go back to Casterly Rock?
That's a good point. I could see. Well, I think that regardless of how it happens, Jaime is not obligated to keep his promise, because it required Tyrion to live as a result of Tywin's actions, and that's not going to happen.
Agreed.
But there could be a conversation where Tywin says, "You got to keep your promise," and Jaime's like, "No, I don't," and Tywin tries to pressure him, and that's just one more opportunity for Jaime to see that his father is a manipulator even of his children, and for Jaime finally saw. The irony is that Tyrion rebels against his dad and basically fucks himself over, but it's him doing that shows Jaime, you don't have to take it anymore. And Jaime is the one who releases Tyrion, and Jaime is the one who leaves.
That was my point. Yeah, that just ate my point right up.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. You did it just right.
If I could add one thing, first of all,
for it.
I was going to say what you said, James, about Tyrion loving having his dad in a problem where it isn't perfect. It didn't work out like Tywin. And I like the way Jaime kind of looked at Tyrion like, "You don't really mean that, do you?" And then, of course, Tyrion kind of goes, "Well, no, that we can't do that." The other thing is, and I'm going to make a prediction here. I may have said it before, but I'm making a prediction right now that Jaime's hand's going to grow back.
Oh, that's one of the things I wanted to add about the Fever Dream book. In Fever Dream, one of the vampires tries to kill himself, and he chains himself up to a wall outside, and that's his turning point. He realizes, you know what? No, I want to live. But he's been outside for so long. By the way, they can stay outside for about 2 hours and have really bad injuries, but any time after that, they could die. So he rips off one chain, and he can't get the other, so he cuts his hand. He gnaws his hand off, and it slowly grows back. And, it's in Fever Dream, which is a book by Martin that was written before Game of Thrones was written.
And I made this prediction on one of our prior tapes, just James and I, when I said that the scene where Qyburn is putting that cream on the stump and the way it looks like the finger or the flaps of skin are, I said that looks like a hand. It looks like it's being prepared with fingers and everything. And I wonder if Qyburn can't get that grab. And after all, we do have a Valonqar that wraps 2 hands around Cersei's neck to kill her at the end. So we'll see.
And wouldn't it be ironic for him to realize that he has another hand at the last minute as he tries to kill Cersei and then kills himself after the devastation? And I'm not saying he will grow back a hand, but it's definitely a possibility. That's my mom's.
We'll see. Jaime's got to know it's growing. It's not that magical. He's got to know something's going on, but it would be cool.
In the book, though, he refuses to look at it.
True, he does. That's all I had to say about that scene.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Very interesting thoughts.
Yeah, very.
The golden boy loses his golden hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to what you were just saying before we got into the hand thing was just about that scene and why I think it played out the way it did was because I do agree that was kind of Tyrion shitting all over his father's plan was kind of inadvertently showing Jaime that he didn't have to follow his father's plan. And I think that clearly came across, and I think that was the kind of the point of when he asked Jaime to be his knight or his champion. Jaime said he would lose, but never didn't necessarily say, no, I won't do it. And then Tyrion looked at him and said, wouldn't that be, the ultimate shitting on Dad's plan if you died right then? And then Jaime kind of looked at him, and I think that was the point of that little scene, was that nod, like, yeah, that would be great, but that doesn't work out for me either, bro. That's what I think that was, playing on. That was his chance to ultimately shit on his dad's plan, but not in the way that would work out in the end for either of them, really.
Good point.
My only tie into this scene will come later, as usual.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Maester Payne likes to be fashionably late.
He always surprises us in the end, just like a few other maesters in Westeros, I guess. Should we move on then to the next
Nice play
scene?
on words, Charlie. Nice play on words.
You like that, didn't you? Any other thoughts on this scene? 9? Alrighty. So after that scene, we get introduced to the man who will be challenging Tyrion in his trial by combat. Because meanwhile, when Jaime and Tyrion are having a discussion, Cersei greets Sir Gregor at the Mountain Clegane who is, by the way, a brand new actor, while I think he's executing some prisoners, it looked like. I couldn't really tell, but that's what I'm assuming it was. It didn't look like he was just training with people. I had only a few thoughts on this scene. I thought it was, an interesting dynamic with the Mountain and Cersei when she approaches him. It was very interesting how he towered over her, and I kind of, the image of her later on being picked up by Sir Robert Strong, came in my head when I was watching that scene. So it was kind of a little, I don't know, I don't know if there's anything intentional or maybe it was just me, but it did seem to ring back to that future event in the books, at least in terms of how Cersei and the Mountain were, juxtaposed and how they seemed to interact. My only other thought, and I made this comment in my own video, is that the new Mountain does, even though he looks really, really Mountain-like in terms of his physique and his overall shape. I mean, I think the actor is actually a strongman competitor. He does strongman competitions in Iceland, I think.
From New Zealand?
Iceland, actually, Iceland.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Right.
He's one of those. I actually watched a documentary recently with that guy in it.
So did I. Vice TV.
Vice TV.
Vice? Yep.
Yes.
That's where I came up with that. That's why I said New Zealand, probably, right?
Yeah. Shout out to Vice TV from us.
Ice Giants of somewhere.
That's right, the Ice Giants. That's right, the Ice Giants of Iceland, I guess it was called. But yeah, as I was saying, I think the only thing I had issue with this new actor is that he looks a little bit too young to play the Hound's older brother, because the Hound looks so much older than the Mountain does in this scenario. But that was just my thought. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on this scene.
I had several.
Oh, LaDonna, let's hear it.
Yeah, he does look younger, but the Hound's been through hell, so
that was my other thought.
Yeah, and also him being presented as looking younger, and then us knowing later that the Hound says that it's his older brother, I think may get the audience to kind of age Sandor down a little bit. And if he ends up with Sansa at some point, I think that makes it more palatable. The other thing is that I loved the scene when Cersei was walking through the guts and gore with her little dress kind of trailing through it. It harkened me back to when Marjorie was walking through the streets and her gown was in the sewer water dragging. In other words, both are willing to go through some shit to get where they need to go. But of course, each of their intentions are different. And Cersei is just a bad girl.
Yeah,
that she is.
Okay, I could argue the difference because the one does drag it through mud and shit, and the other one drags it through intestines and blood.
Yeah, and
one's willing to kill and the other one's willing to do dirty things.
Well, not only that, but Marjorie did it in an effort to ingratiate herself with the people at King's Landing when she went into the orphanage to give the children toys, whereas Cersei's doing it to ultimately get the best killer she can, and it's not a direct parallel, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Maester, yeah.
interesting how she walks up to him by herself. To me, it was like a display of power. She leaves her guards behind. She walks up to this brutal rapist murderer and just stands like right in front of him. And
Good point. And
Foreshadowing, guys. Just
Yeah.
saying.
And Maester Payne also, she also says, "I need you to kill somebody," and he says, "Who?" And she basically says, "Does it matter?"
yeah,
And I want to add to that, they did that intentionally because if y'all, I don't know if y'all reread the scene with Oberyn and the mountain fighting, but the first thing Oberyn says when they start fighting is, "Did they tell you who I was?" And the mountain, I don't remember if he responds, but it's basically a negative response. So
Awesome.
that's why they did that, because Oberyn's going to say, "Did they tell you who I am?"
That's
okay.
why they had Cersei. Yeah.
Good
I
thought.
actually like this guy. I think I mean, we haven't heard him act, and we're not going to need him to act really, except for one scene next episode, and I guarantee you those are the lines he auditioned with. So there he's going to be just fine. This will never happen.
Well, that's
But
arguable.
I really hope that after the show's over, they go back and take the actor that we prefer and map his physique and voice over, because I would love to go back and watch it with this mountain. This mountain by far has the best physique in my opinion.
Agreed.
He's the second strongest man in the world supposedly living right now. So it would be wonderful for him to be there. I also think there were some issues from what I read about people not quite sure what was happening with the mountain in that scene. Like you said, Charlie, I think those were prisoners probably being punished for petty theft, probably being punished for stealing food for their families, but the punishment in King's Landing, which we've been told, and Cersei's even like, lock them outside. I don't want any peasants in here during the battle. I bet they're supposed to be executed, and the mountain just wants some target practice. To me, it's that simple. I don't know.
I personally thought the first mountain, his facial characteristics were better, but this guy is so huge.
Agreed.
Yeah. They had the first mountain's face on this guy's body, it'd be perfect.
Yeah.
that's the general consensus. Yeah.
Like James said, he isn't going to be required to show his face for very long.
That's true. That's very
He
true.
looks so young. Yeah, I agree with Charlie there, though.
I think that will dissolve. I don't know, but I bet. Well, we'll never actually see the Hound and the Mountain's faces next to each other again. So the size will be the only thing we'll be comparing at that point, if they ever do fight. Which will.
Unless we get a freaking head.
Or unless it's Robb Stark's head.
It doesn't matter, in my opinion. If I can finish what I'm saying, whatever they put on the head is going to be something other than what we've got. So it's not going to matter, at least as far as age, even if it's a Frankenhead. But I really don't think he looks younger. I know why that's said. I just think he's got, I don't know, Irish aspect, this like rosy cheeks sort of thing going.
That runs
to his face though.
Well, I know he is younger because the interview with Throwncast with Rory McCann, they asked him about the guy who's playing the Mountain. He said, "Oh, he's a big boy," and yeah, and he does those strongman competitions. And the female interviewer said, "Well, would you consider doing that?" And he said, "Oh no, I'm far too old. My body's hard."
I looked it up quickly just now. He's actually a year older than me. He's born 1988, so.
He's a year older than you, Charlie?
Yeah, he's pretty young.
Older and 8 times your size.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's 1 year old. Wow, he's 1 year older than me. That's ridiculous.
You guys are young.
We're young uns. I just had a quick thought, though. Well, I have a huge thought on the Mountain and the Hound, but I'll get to that when we get to Arya's scene.
Oh, he's a year younger than me. My fault.
87, are you? I have a thought on. I have a thought on the Mountain and the Hound, but I'll bring it up later on. But just this discussion of who, well, if Sir Robert Strong has a head, because I don't think he does, but I just thought, wouldn't it be funny if they put Lawless Merryweather?
Stokeworth.
Yeah. Stokeworth's, I think it was her sister who was locked up by Cersei and tortured and killed. Yeah. What if they put her head on his body? That'd be a little bit funny, but I don't know. Just a grim, humorous thought there with you guys. Because, I mean, she was in prison. I was wondering if they're going to do something with her since she is, you know, one of those people that Cersei had Qyburn do whatever he wants with, so.
Shay's also been taken away with Qyburn too, right? I'm pretty sure Qyburn has Shay's body down there. I don't know.
Right.
8 different people to make Robert Strong, or
it would just be interesting, like Maester, if they were to incorporate various aspects of these individuals into Robert Strong, or at least bring them back in some sense.
Well, I wonder, though, do you think, though, if they are going to do it that way, where it has to be one part of each, or a different person, don't you think they'd all be, like, heroes, or at least awesome people?
Oh, I agree. No, honestly, I do think it's all, you know, the Mountain in this character. I'm just saying it would be interesting if they were to come back in some aspect later on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't clear there, yeah.
You know, I think ultimately what Qyburn's doing with the other bodies is just experimenting with them so he can figure out how to
resurrect
the Mountain back to form. And if I could, you know, when Bronn comes in and he talks about marrying one of the Stokeworth girls, and in the book, Cersei gets rid of either that Felice's mother or sister by sending her to Qyburn because she's sick of her running her mouth.
Charlie just mentioned that.
Oh, well, I know. That's why I'm going to add this. And then ultimately when Cersei finds out she needs her, she asks Qyburn to bring her up from the cellar, and Qyburn says, I'm afraid she won't be much help to you because she can't even feed herself anymore.
And that's to add to what my mom just said. It is implied that Bronn is going to kill that person, but it's almost going to be unnecessary because Qyburn's going to get a hold of her.
Gotcha.
So do we have any more thoughts on the Mountain for this scene, or Cersei? Or is it time to move it on?
Y'all bring up an interesting question I had not considered before. I don't think y'all intended to bring it up, but is it possible that Cersei would ask Qyburn to attach some sort of apparatus to the Mountain so that Cersei could use the Mountain like she used, oh man, what's her cousin's name?
Like a puppet?
Lancel. Like she used Lancel?
Talking about
sex here.
You mean like use him as a sexual object, or you mean just control him like a remote control?
Sex object.
Sex object, okay. It'd be an interesting thought, I mean.
I doubt it.
I agree. It's just something to think about.
Okay.
Another thing, it kind of reminds me of, and this is totally out in left field, but it reminds me of American Horror Story, because in the first season, the devil is supposedly born from a human and a spirit, so maybe if Cersei and the Mountain, or Sir Robert Strong, have a child, there's the devil born. I don't know.
So another vag monster.
There you go, another one.
Oh, another vag monster.
Another
oh, no.
monster.
I don't need any more nightmares about vags. Come on now.
Alrighty. Shall we keep moving?
Sure.
Alrighty. So after that scene, the next scene we have at King's Landing is with Bronn, who days later visits Tyrion and informs him that he is to wed a highborn lady and will not be Tyrion's champion. We find out basically that, you know, Cersei paid off Bronn by getting him married with, you know, this dim-witted girl named Lolly Stokeworth. Now, like I said in my own review, it's kind of sad to see Bronn betray Tyrion, I guess, in this setting, but he did make some valid points. You know, when has Tyrion ever risked his life for Bronn? And at least Bronn is being straight up and real with him, unlike, you know, quite a few other characters. Also, it does sound like they might be going into a different direction with the Lolly Stokeworth character and how Bronn will gain power over that household or that family. Because if I recall in the books, there was that whole plot with Cersei trying to use Bronn's, I guess his sister-in-law in this case, Lolly's older sister, and her husband to get rid of Bronn, but then it ends up in Bronn and the husband dueling, and Bronn killing Lollys's brother-in-law in this case, and sending what's-her-face, I don't remember if her name was Taina, or I forget her name, the girl that gets tortured by, or that gets experimented on by Qyburn.
That's Taina Merrywood. I think Felice is the one you're thinking of.
No, I'm talking Merryweather?
Isn't it Taina
Wait, I'm all
Merrywood?
confused. Was it Taina Merryweather? I thought it was Lollys Stokeworth's sister who was...
No, you're right about the sister, but her name is Felice.
The one who's going to marry Bronn?
No. Yeah, okay. Lawless Stokeworth is the one that's going to marry Bronn.
Correct.
Felice Stokeworth, Falyse, is the
sister.
heir.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's something the sister, where,
Right.
Because they have that whole dynamic where the sister runs back to King's Landing and so on and so forth in order to Bronn to get control. But in the TV show, we have Bronn basically stating it out there that he's planning to kill off Felice, the older sister, and in order to gain power. So it's a bit of a change there. I don't know if they're going to go in that direction. But that's what I suspect anyway, just to compress the storyline and cut off a few characters that aren't necessary. That was all about that.
And they cut out the mama completely, who is throughout the books trying to get her wed.
Precisely, because she keeps wanting to have Tyrion marrying, I think it was Lollys.
Peter went to the Star. I can't remember.
Did she go to the Starks?
But yeah,
I remember Tyrion definitely was the one that was getting pestered a lot. But...
I know she went to Peter Baelish.
Okay. Anyway, that was my only thought. I just thought they were going to cut it. Like, I think they made it pretty clear they're going to cut down on terms of that character's role and her sister's role and her so on and so forth.
Well, if they cut that out and they've cut out the Lawless rape by 50 men at the riot, are they going to cut out the child that is born and he wants to name it a Lannister name?
Well, they could also just have it a child with him and Lollys instead, because he did mention that Lollys's sheets were warm and comfortable or something to that effect, or her legs were nice.
Warm.
So it could be his actual son that he names Tyrion, as opposed to some, the product of a rape.
It could be, and also I think the fact that Bronn said, "When have you ever saved me?" is a foreshadowing.
Oh, by far. And I think we need to keep that in mind. There will be a point in which Tyrion saves Bronn, and that solidifies their friendship in the end.
Absolutely.
That's a good thought. I never thought of that.
I like it.
I love you, Charlie. You mentioned Bronn saying that when have you ever saved my life? They just nailed that. The scene was going perfectly. We totally understand where Bronn's coming from, but we're like, yeah, but he's your friend. Don't you want to use and he's like, when have you ever risked your life for me? And my mom was talking to me yesterday about, it's like the conversation where he says, before the Battle of Blackwater, Tyrion says, "Good luck, my friend." And he says, "Oh, so we're friends now." And Tyrion says, "Just because I pay you doesn't mean we're not friends." Well, why is he paying him? Tyrion is paying him to protect Tyrion. And now that Tyrion doesn't have the money, they're still friends, but he's a sellsword. He's got to sell his sword.
You're right about every bit of that, but I also think that they are friends ultimately, and we'll see what happens. We'll see.
It even says, I'm sorry, are you done, LaDonna?
I still say I think he's related to Dolorous Edd.
I hope so. I like that.
He says he's been above the wall.
Yeah, he does.
Kind of looks like him and has kind of the same attitude, just. And we also had Dolorous Edd saying that Bronn had his nose broken when his mother threw a frying pan at him, and it really wasn't for him; it was for his younger brother.
Oh,
Bronn
that's a good thought. I've never actually thought of that possibility. Did you guys mention that in one of your old videos?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to rewatch that then.
What did you say, Maester Payne?
No, I just said that Don had mentioned that before one other time about Dolorous Edd and Bronn.
Eli, I think you were going to say something way earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. In this part, this is where I get the impersonation, the mimicry sort of thing. Bronn looking like a peacock, trying to pretend that he's this highfalutin fella. So I got the mimicry impersonation part there for one of them. That's basically it.
No, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, that's true. I was going to say that now that you mentioned that up, or you bring that up. Sorry, you were saying something, Eli?
I was just going to add with the Bronn thing, especially, and now we see it come apparent, is that he says openly, I think it's to Tyrion in one of the earlier episodes. It may be with Jaime in one of the sparring sessions. I'm not sure. But he says, I think it's the episode right before Blackwater, when they're walking on the, and he says something about paying him, and he says, the second someone pays me more, or something like that. Like, he's very honest with him from the very beginning that if someone pays me more, I will betray you. Like, he's telling him that. And it's reiterated when he says that, you know, just tell me if it's ever offered. But I think this is where you see that come into full fruition, is that here, you know, I'm sorry, I was paid more and you can't offer me what I'm being offered.
Yeah,
I
but
apologize, you know.
it does make us wonder, though, if he would have considered fighting if he'd had a decent chance of winning. It leaves it a little ambiguous.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's what I think is part of the offer. You know, like safety and all these things, but Tyrion is offering all of these things, but no safety.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
And I think it goes without saying that Bronn said previously, I don't want to wear the flashy robes, and he's wearing them in this. I think it'd be really funny and ironic, since we kind of had a Batman character without a cape. I think it would be really funny if when Tyrion saves Bronn, Bronn needs saving because his cape got in his way. Because there's a classic thing, and Martin reads comic books all the time, there's a classic thing about, I mean, even in The Watchmen, capes are a detriment.
Yeah. My only question is, in the book, is that line in the book when he says, "You've never saved my life"?
I don't remember it.
I was going to say, because what you just said would be very epic if that happened, because that would be the whole, you never saved my life, and now he's saving his ass, you know. That would be awesome. But I don't remember that. I don't remember if that was in the books. If it is, that's great.
Well, it may just be ambiguous in the books, but David and Dan, the writers, want the audience to be brought along more because they don't have the whole background going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I love it either way, don't get me wrong.
But I don't remember it either.
Any more thoughts, folks?
I'm good.
All right. So I guess we can address the last scene for King's Landing, but I think clearly the most epic one for this episode. And that is, of course, when at night Tyrion is visited by Oberyn Martell, who tells Tyrion that he will be his champion in order to exact revenge on Sir Gregor for killing his sister Elia and her children. Now, I think the last scene here was really interesting because, like I mentioned in my own video, once again, we learn, and just as I touched upon, I think, our last episode review, our group review, is that we get another glimpse as to how certain people are perceived in Westeros. And this time, we get a glimpse of how, basically people who are outsiders, like people who have abnormalities, I guess, physical abnormalities, quote unquote, like dwarves or people missing limbs, so on and so forth, people with one eye, hermaphrodites, people with disabilities, I guess, yes, people with, I guess, disabilities, for lack of better words in this context, are treated and are viewed because, we have this whole dialogue where Oberyn tells Tyrion just how tales about this, this monstrous baby born to Tywin Lannister has been born, and how, people are frightened by him, and he's atrocious looking, and he's a horrible little creature. And then Oberyn basically reveals that when he finally gets the chance to visit Tyrion for the first time, he was a little bit disappointed, I guess, because he saw nothing of that. He just saw basically a little baby with slightly bigger head and, nothing really else abnormal about him. It was really sweet. It was a really touching scene. And of course, Tyrion, the actor, Peter Dinklage, played that amazingly. Like, he had this emotion in his face. He wasn't crying, but you could tell the tears in his eyes because finally somebody could recognize Tyrion for who he was at the end of the day, whereas, so many people impose all these horrible images onto him. And again, like I said, I thought it was interesting just how people who are quote-unquote abnormal are treated in Westeros, and I think this is a trope that George R. R. Martin keeps coming back to when he touches upon, issues like homosexuality, women who don't fit their gender roles, oppression of women, so on and so forth, rape even. So again, I thought that was an interesting little glimpse of how things are seen in medieval Westeros.
If I
Can I go first? I'm only one little thing and I'm done.
Go ahead. I have a thought to add, but go ahead. And I'll let LaDonna go as well.
I was just going to say that I know that I said the whole sarcastic Inigo Montoya comment about Martell before, but I don't know if he's toned the accent back or if it's just started to grow on me, but I'm starting to like this actor a lot. Of course, sadly enough. But,
of course. He is a very likable character at the end of the day.
But yeah, that was my only thing to throw in. I didn't really have any thoughts, but yeah, that was my only thing to throw in. I'm starting to like this character, unfortunately.
LaDonna, you had a thought?
I wanted to say two things. Number one, I read a recent article. I just saw the headline. They're going to be next season in Spain, so I presume that's where they're going to film Dorne. And the other is going to your theory about the babies and the disability and people not being willing to accept differences in children. I think that if we're right, I think that plays into a potential baby later on at the end of this. Different. So hold that idea for like 5 years from now.
I'll keep that in mind. I want to add one quick thing, if you guys don't mind, on this scene.
Go ahead.
Thanks. It just has to do with this dynamic between siblings, because in this scene we have the discussion of Cersei being so cruel to Tyrion, and yet again I mentioned this in my own video, so I apologize for constantly regurgitating things I've already said. But there's this whole image of Tyrion being tortured as a baby by Cersei, and I think there was that whole thing where she grabbed his penis and it looked like she was going to pull it off or something. And then we have Tyrion as an adult, basically focused on that body part, going to prostitutes, constantly having sex. It's almost like that body part that was tortured in him as a child is constantly brought up in his current life. And I think the same thing can be said about a few other characters. I mean, there's this other dynamic with the Hound and the Mountain that was also very emphasized this episode about his burn that the Mountain did to the Hound, and his burned face is something that's constantly brought up in terms of how we perceive the Hound. It's something that he constantly not cringes over, but it's something that he constantly worries about, or he has a fear of fire because of. And of course that comes up later on with Arya and his scene. And I thought it was just interesting in general how this sibling dynamic of an older sibling torturing a younger sibling was brought up this episode. And of course we could look at Daenerys and Viserys, although they aren't really mentioned this episode, but I just thought it was interesting how that kind of fits into the whole series sometimes.
That's a really great point, Charlie.
I don't really look at Tyrion as he's being controlled by his penis. I mean, he does a lot in his life. Master of Coin, the stewards, and everything like that.
Don't get it wrong. I don't mean that I mean I don't mean that the fact that she grabbed his penis when he was young is the reason why he's going around and having sex. I just think that it's interesting how that image was brought up and how later on in his adult life he is known as a incredible lecher. And it's brought up in the trial scene.
If I can add one more thing, you've already talked about the Hound's childhood trauma. You've talked about the Tyrion's childhood trauma.
But yeah, go ahead.
You may be about to say it. Go ahead.
Oh, it was about Dany and Daenerys' goal of reclaiming Westeros as something that was constantly imbued in her by her older brother.
That's true too. But there was somebody else I was going to say, and now I'd be daggone, it's lost in my brain.
Sorry, I made you lose your thought.
If I could real quick, one thing I would add is that kind of plays into the whole thing I've said about the trope of childhood interactions or situations, and there's a better word for it than I'm coming up with. Childhood things that happen to you clearly shape who you become when you're older. And this could play into it where maybe it's the older brother, your older sibling shapes you, but it's kind of that same thing.
Yeah, and that's true. And I remember who I was going to say is Littlefinger also got fixated in childhood.
Very true, very true.
This whole, my one big theory will come up later, just when that old man dies. But that's it. It'll come
Okay.
up.
Maester Payne, I apologize. I really interrupted you there. Did you have any other things?
Oh no,
Anything else you
I
want to add?
you guys, my screen froze, and if you guys could hear me talking, I was just trying to figure out if I was
You're here.
you guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't sure. I was trying to talk through it, but I wasn't sure if someone dropped out or if everyone dropped out.
Happened earlier to me. James, did you have anything to add on this scene?
I do.
Let's hear it.
Fucking perfect.
You did say this was your favorite scene of the episode.
I cried. I cried twice in this episode, and when I say cry, I don't mean like. I mean like tears in my eyes and probably.
Bullshit.
I cried. That's tears.
I'm just kidding.
That's
No, I'm saying you were
but it was
born.
perfect. I cried when Oberyn.
I feel that would make a great viral video. Sorry. LaDonna, film it next time.
I cried when Oberyn says, and we did not try to hide our disappointment. I told Cersei, that is not a monster. That is just a baby. And Tyrion's like, goddamn right, it's just a baby. I seriously could not have done it better. Oberyn was, as much as Tyrion nailed this, it was Oberyn that made this scene. Tyrion's perfect, don't get me wrong, but the way Oberyn says it, what about what I want? I want justice. If you want justice, you come to the wrong place. I disagree. And at that point, you can even see like a little bit of water under his eye because he's thinking about all the things that have ever happened to him. Okay.
He's thinking of his sister. That's where that tear's coming from.
Yeah, and his niece and nephew too.
Yeah.
Their lives thrown away. Mama mentioned a baby at the end. I had not thought about it, but it's perfect in this situation because if there is some sort of, like you've all heard about in my final battle, the mixture of other and probably everything fucking else and human, other and human, White Walker and human, then that everybody's gonna think it's going to be born a monster.
Oh, nice. I like that.
I think that's my sole comment that landed me on this panel was the one where I said the Kinslayer thing, nobody can kill anybody. I think that's the sole thing that got me landed here.
Everybody's. If you kill anybody, you're a Kinslayer.
You're a Kinslayer, yep.
All right. We were talking about Tyrion's penis. I don't think Tyrion's libido is his soul. It doesn't drive him. He's just got a big penis and he likes sex. But I think we're meant to compare Tyrion and Theon because they both lack control of their lives and they both resort to sex as being the thing they can control. Theon, the only thing before Theon goes to the Iron Islands that he takes any real pride in is his sex, and we're never told he's good, except by his own mouth. And Tyrion, on the other hand, seems to be justified in believing. Anyway, point is, they're both kind of left without another opportunity. Okay, now here's what I really want to talk about. Y'all were talking about childhood trauma, and one of the main things that causes childhood trauma is being different, because being different leads to, and we're all different. There are when I was in school, there were 30 people at the most in our class. We had 16 at some point in our class. I mean, our grade, and I mean, sects start forming, and if you're not a part of one, you don't have any friends. Done and done. But that's easy if you have a disability. It happens easily to people with disability. And kids are fucking mean. But this is generally what happens. Okay, so, I wanted to add, by the way, talking about how awesome Oberyn is. They introduced him in this season, showed us how awesome he is, and they're going to kill him this season. Viewers are going to be pissed. Okay, so talking about the disability. There were 4 disabilities mentioned in this, and not a single one was dwarfism.
You're right.
One was claws. We've already seen claws. Do y'all remember where we saw him? The Night's King. Okay? And to add to that, in Fever Dream, the vampire book he wrote, I know I keep mentioning it, but their fingernails are really fucking strong and can tear through wood and some stone. Alright? But claws is one thing. And another thing he mentioned is one red eye. Blood Raven, obviously. I mean, we all know that. But think about that's some of the huge psychology of Bloodraven. We're told all these horrible things about him, but we don't really know who or what he is. Even in the books, I mean, if you go back to the Duck and Egg tales, we're really not told much about him except for the paranoia that the public has about him because he's so white, he's an albino, and because he has a red eye. That in my opinion, that was straight up them telling us we're going to introduce this character later, and you're not going to know what to think about him, but you're probably wrong in whatever you're going to conclude. Another thing he mentioned was a tail, and I don't know if that was a reference. I don't know if that was a reference to anything in specific, but we have not seen anything with a tail in here other than animals, except for one. We've never seen anything humanoid with a tail except for one thing. We're told that Dany's baby had a tail.
That's what I was going to say.
And the other thing that is mentioned is having both sex organs, being hermaphroditic. And Martin is touching on a lot of stuff. I don't know.
Sweets, maybe?
that is a possible place he could go with somebody. Varys. I mean, I'm not saying it's Varys. I think Varys is straight up a woman. But
what about Sweets, James? Isn't she a hermaphrodite?
Who?
Sweets, the slave by Yezanzo Kagav, I think it is. The slave owner who owns Tyrion in Book 5. His favorite slave was the violet-eyed slave named Sweets, and she was a hermaphrodite.
You are right. You are right.
And I just thought of that when you brought that up. And actually, I think somebody made a comment about that in my own video.
I had one quick question. This is actually going to be a little off topic, just more off the red eye thing. Is what was the general religion of Valyria, Old Valyria?
Wasn't it like a pantheon of gods, something similar to, like, I guess, Greco-Roman mythology? Maybe I'm wrong. That's what I thought it was. I'm looking it up, I guess. Yeah.
I'm looking it up. I mean,
while you guys look that up, if we leave out the hermaphrodite part, all of it sounds like Ghost.
Oh right, Ghost with the red
That's
eye.
where, yeah, the albino thing. That's what is playing in.
Claws.
Because it was in the very first. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, all I was going to reiterate was the claws, the red eye, the tail. It all sounds like Ghost to me.
In the very first chapter, he talks about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. James, I found the article on religion in Old Valyria. Unless you have it up too.
I have mixed religion. That's what
I have one. It says there were a number of different gods, among them Balerion, Meraxes, and Vagar. The singers named Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters 3 dragons after those gods, although Aegon converted to the faith of the Seven during the War of Conquest.
Yeah, I've only heard
Neither did I.
After, but I've never heard anything of the actual gods. I was just kind of thinking of, this was just an offshoot theory that I was just going to bring up while I had you guys all here and see if anyone had any ideas, was, does anyone possibly think that maybe that was true belief in the Red God that caused the old doom? Fire consuming everyone, you know?
Well, I mean, somebody here, I think it was James, brought up the idea of weapons of mass destruction. No, it was LaDonna talking about weapons of mass destruction being brought to Westeros via Dany, potentially. It would be interesting, however, if the doom was caused by these so-called weapons of mass destruction, the dragons, I mean.
Well, see, what I was thinking is everyone's true belief, you know, being the, you know, like fire, kind of like, I just happened to rewatch the Blackwater episode, and after Stannis comes back, he's kind of yelling at Melisandre. But if you think about it, you had a priestess who wanted everyone burned, and you sent your people and they lost, but they were all burned. By all rights, she probably wanted that to happen, you know?
You can make the argument.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Mr.
go ahead, Eli.
No, that was it. That was it. Just that she clearly wants everyone. I think the Red God's purification by fire is that in the end, kind of that all men must die thing, where everyone will die by fire, and that's okay, even though everyone may not see it that way. You know, who's not by the Red God may be like, well, fuck your fire. You know, I don't want to burn. You know,
The drowned god maybe might agree.
yeah, exactly.
You guys and your two theories, you can make the argument that religion itself is a weapon of mass destruction. Like all the wars fought over religion, right?
Very Marxian, that's true.
I'll wait to
Not
bring it up
very
until
Marxian,
later.
Not very Marxian. It
No?
may be applicable to Marxian, but it is a general truth that religion has caused a lot of wars in this world. And I think a lot of people would disagree with that, probably.
We don't want people
What's
jumping
that?
all over our asses now.
That was-
But Maester Payne, I think you hit on what my response was going to be, which is that I don't think we are. Martin has said that there will, generally speaking, he has said there will be no gods presented, and we get a huge indication of that in this episode, where we're going to get to it in a minute, but where Melisandre tells Selyse, for other people, I have to use all these spells that makes them hallucinate. For you, I would never use that. Bitch, you just told her that you used the spells for her. It's basically her being so confident that she can tell you, oh, I have to manipulate everybody else, but not you. You're the one I don't have to manipulate.
Because she's already a believer.
Well, she's also likely manipulating her right there when she says, and my mom mentioned this, she's feeding her the ideas. Imagine if she dropped a little bit of acid on Selyse when she's not looking, or maybe it's the stuff in the pool. And Melisandre it's the same thing she did to Stannis. She's whispering in somebody's ear, don't you see what has to be done with insert? It's like the
you know something no one else knows.
Psychic standing in front of the room and going, I'm picturing someone with a first name that starts with D. Anybody? But she's feeding the information. So now Selyse is sitting there tripping, looking at the fire, and Melisandre's going, don't you see stuff having to do with Shireen and me needing her? And it's still ambiguous because we're going to find out later that Melisandre had a plan, but I mean it doesn't matter what the plan is as long as she's feeding bullshit.
I had a similar thought, which is basically you just explained it all. Nowhere near as in detail, but I agree with you.
Death by fire is the purest death.
And silence emerges. By the way, James, when I said it was Marxian, I didn't mean that Marx invented this. I just was reminded of the statement that he made about religion being the opium of the masses. That's why I made that comment.
I knew what I didn't know you meant that direct quote, but I knew that you meant that it was
that idea.
Religion was not favored amongst Marxists.
Yeah. You presented some very intricate thoughts there, gotta say. Did anybody else have anything to say on, before we get into the Dragonstone scene, which you brought up here, but does anybody have any other thoughts on this Oberyn scene specifically?
He kind of had a Statue of Liberty pose going on there with the torch.
The Bravo.
I don't know what I mean, you could go anywhere with that. I just noticed it, that's all. I have nothing to say about it.
I gotta say, and just so we can think about it for a split second, the mindset of the viewers has to be in complete turmoil right now because they just introduced Oberyn. They don't give a fuck about the Mountain. They hope he dies, and we just had the Red Wedding, and we just had Joffrey die. They're really in turmoil, I bet, in their heads, thinking who's gonna win this battle. And the irony is both of them are gonna die. But if I can add a little bit of history real quick. Oberyn, when he was young, accidentally, he's the reason Willis Tyrell is a paraplegic, or what the issue he has. Oberyn's responsible for that. And what'd you say, Maester Payne?
I was just agreeing with you.
And yeah, Eli?
No, you finish yours, but I want to throw in one thing before we jump to the next scene.
The person who was taking care of Willis at the time blamed it on Oberyn. It was Oberyn's fault, but he didn't mean to do it. And even though Willis was like, it's not his fault, he didn't mean to, the person taking care of Willis challenged Oberyn to a duel, which was to first blood, because Oberyn was 16 and so young, he didn't want to kill him. And during the battle, they both ended up injured. They both got cut, this random dude and Oberyn. Oberyn was fine. The other dude's wounds festered and killed him, and it became a rumor that Oberyn had used poison in the situation, and that's where Oberyn gets the name the Red Viper.
Great thought. I have a slight comment on that later on, but Eli, you wanted to say something?
The only thing I was going to bring up was actually a question for LaDonna, and that was I saw this on another person's review and brought up from a female perspective, and they were kind of upset that I don't know if you noticed. I didn't notice it when it happened, but I noticed after they brought it up that they changed his story. His mother brought him to King's Landing for the first time, and they changed it to his father in this. I didn't know if you noticed that.
Do you mean when they went to the Lannisters, or
when he tells the story of how the first time he came to King's Landing, he said, "I
thought it was I thought that was Casterly Rock."
Or yeah, Casterly Rock. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I did not catch that. That's interesting.
I did notice that.
And I heard it from a female perspective on the review, and they were just very pissed off that, like, again, when you're not going to show this character, why shit on the female again? You know, like, if you're not going to show the person, why change it from lord to lady? That's the only thing they had to do was change the word. That happened. If you have any theories, I'd love to hear it.
To say about that, it's going to come in later on when we're talking, but that's a good point that you raised, because it does tie into something that they've switched near the end of the episode.
Yes, it happens again in this episode. Yes.
And I think that it's the showrunners mocking.
Okay.
A few things around. They're having their fun with us.
I got you.
I can see that. Any other thoughts? I'll take that silent as a resounding no. So how about we discuss things in the north? Since it's a pretty short scene and it's, fairly soon after the events of King's Landing, or at least the first couple of scenes there. So basically here, Jon and his remaining men arrive back at Castle Black, and at a meeting, Jon Snow implores Sir Alliser Thorne to block the passage through the wall in order to prevent Mance Rayder's army from coming through. But of course, his request is denied, and I think the whole group of men who are there kind of laugh at Jon. Poor Jon. I didn't have a lot of thoughts on the scene. I made a comment in my own video once again that, the fact that Jon Snow's wolf was requested to be locked up was kind of symbolic of Jon not having, I guess, the upper hand in the situation, or at least not being in a favorable position, as opposed to when his direwolf.
A lot more since you mentioned that. I've started to notice that a lot more, even in rereads of the books. I've started to notice that them not being themselves when they're not near their primal, they're not their primal selves,
They're legendary, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, I have something to add to that scene. First of all, we haven't seen Bowen Marsh in a long time. We saw him right then, and he's the one who stabs Jon later. They changed him, though, from a steward into a builder, just so that they could build the tension later between he and Jon, because he obviously was torn whether or not to do what Jon says. I mean, he's having a hard time deciding, and he ultimately sides with Alliser. And then, of course, later on, he has that same dilemma, because he ends up stabbing Jon, but he's crying, amid salt and smoke. So I like that.
Yeah, I never actually thought about that, LaDonna. Good point there.
That's also the scene I was talking about where they switched it from the books. Jon actually doesn't want to fill the tunnel, right? It's somebody else that wants to do it. Jon wants to keep it open.
I don't remember. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in his first chapter, I think, of Dance with Dragons. The first Jon chapter.
Yeah, I remember it.
While he's doing that, I just want to correct a mistake I made. It's not the caretaker of Willis that challenged Oberyn to a duel. It's another dude, the Lord Edgar Ironwood, and it was because Oberyn slept with his wife.
Very open of him.
And the person that corrected that was Matthew Rayson, I think.
Thank you.
No, M-I-T-M Adams. Nice try. Nice try, Charlie. Beat you to it.
Also, Willis was not.
LaDonna, go ahead.
Willis was not a paraplegic. He had one leg crushed. But to think about it, that leg crush, by the way, is a mirroring of the Hound's leg being the thing that actually got injured. and she was supposed to marry. She had kind of romantic feelings about Willis, and then she actually changes those romantic hopes to the Hound. So thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, go.
Good point.
Anyone? No, I was just gonna say, does anyone else have video on LaDonna? I was only getting a symbol.
I've got our video.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maester
About the
Payne?
John
Or sorry,
scene,
James?
I really don't. No, yeah, go ahead. If he was. Oh,
I haven't found it. I don't know if I'm going to. I might have the wrong chapter, but I checked it out, and I'm fairly certain that John wants to be able to have that open, the tunnel. That's all I have to say, anyways. Well,
I wanted to point out that the guy who is the head builder in this is Mama.
I already said it.
Oh, well, in the books, he is the head steward, not the head
Builder.
So they switched that around. And I saw an interview of him, and he's very happy to be back on the show. So, and he's going to be the one who stabs John. So they're building that up, definitely. I liked the scene. I think that it's obviously just to show that arguably they could have saved themselves, but that they need Stannis, and it sets up John as the future Lord Commander.
The only thing I would add to this scene that I did not like is it's the same thing that I don't like about every scene at the wall when it comes to discussing major issues is that is not the dining hall / council room. I mean, come on. They should stop having these fucking huge discussions over dire issues right in front of everyone in the place. You know, like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? You know, that's not how they should be in a room aside. I mean, I know it's a small thing, but I'm just so sick of it because it happens over and over where John will say something that makes sense to all of us as watchers, and we keep just getting it reiterated by everyone in the background going, you know what he means? You know what he means? You know, like, I just don't like it.
I see what you're saying. To me, that is the way the Night's Watch is supposed to work, except that when their Lord Commander's gone. Because the Lord Commander's gone, the head of each of the sects goes up, and we kind of got told in the last episode of the episode before it that they're scared that if they allow a vote that John might win. And they have never actually say it, but they're scared that if they have the vote, they won't win.
But isn't he acting Lord Commander?
He's acting Lord Commander, but he is not actually Lord Commander.
So he doesn't use his chambers?
Well, his
I
chambers
honestly don't know. I'm just asking.
I think I understand where you're coming from, but to me, this is the only way to operate if you are not the Lord Commander. Because the Lord Commander can do everything without anybody's opinion. He's not a Lord Commander. So it's kind of like a council. And I kind of got the impression that this was how it worked already, but that they never had to ask the public's opinion because they knew what they were doing, at least.
I just never took the black as a democracy, because that's what it seems like it's playing out as, like almost a democracy as long as the ruler doesn't piss off everybody. You know, like
you get elected Lord Commander.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, decisions being done in front of everyone. I'm not sure how it is in the books. I just didn't think that major decisions based on strategy and tactics were decided in front of everyone.
That's a fair point.
That's a good point.
But that was my only... That wasn't really playing into the actual scene. That was just something that reiterates itself over and over.
And you feel like you've seen it happen over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Good point. Good point. Any more thoughts on this scene, folks?
Not me.
Alrighty, so how about we deal with my favorite scene, or at least my favorite character? Of course, the events across the Narrow Sea with Daenerys. So Daenerys finds Daario Naharis in her quarters. He requests that she make use of his talents in either war or women, to which she responds by ordering him to take off his clothes. I guess we could just address this specific scene first. Now I think that this, the infamous Daario Daenerys sexing is something some of us, at least yours truly here, was waiting for quite some time.
Yeah.
And it clearly shows that Daenerys does not mess around. I'm not gonna say I was hoping for more, but clearly they are taking the Daario duo into a different direction than they have in the books. There's less of a romance being built up here. Should I? I guess I can also mention. Really, you think so? Well, actually, let's hear your thoughts then.
All right, let me. So
should I address the whole scene first as well as the next one, or do you want to just?
Let me knock this out, and we can talk about this in specific because it's really kind of a long scene.
If you have 3 points, I have something real small I can throw in real quick.
Name 3 people that are
involved.
Oh,
never mind.
There's Daario, obviously Jorah, and ultimately we know Zara. Hizdahr's Dolores.
Yeah.
To me, the purpose of these 2 scenes was to get Jorah out of the picture because he already kind of knows that he's not the one for her. He just needed to see it. And then after that, to get recognition from her, that pushed him out because we don't need 3. Jorah's not really involved in the issue. The issue is love or sensuality versus logic. It's passion versus logic. And I think that they perfectly build it up with Daario because she's had to deny herself her feelings, and they did it in 4 episodes where even Missandei's like, he's very brave. Yeah, whatever. She's obviously fighting it. I thought it was done perfectly. One more scene, and we've got a whole nother season before she gets the poison and has to make her choice. So, to me, I buy her and Daario having a passionate love affair. But the point is that ultimately we're supposed to wonder, is he manipulating her or not? And I don't think he is, but I think that's the point, and I think they're building it perfectly.
See, I thought that was where the mocking came in. I thought it was actually Daario sort of mocking Dany more than Dany mocking Daario.
Interesting. Because like I mentioned in my own video, that whole mocking space bird being really imposed on Daenerys in this scene specifically. The first one, I haven't addressed the second one yet, but yeah. So it's interesting that you kind of see it as flipped over.
I actually have here in my notes, Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
To mention you when I said that. But I can pick up on it after your video. But yeah, I thought it was him mocking her rather than her him.
Okay. The only thing I would add to this scene is just based on how it plays out, which I don't remember the exact specifics of it playing out in the book. Maybe, I don't know, does it run through the same way?
No, well, that's why I want to address the second scene with Daenerys.
Okay, I can throw this in.
Thing. Go ahead.
Okay, I can just throw this in real quick then. I did see somewhere that, I'm not sure exactly, it never specified which actress it was, but it was someone's media page that worked on the show that stated that another actress on the show, one of the main actresses, stated that they wanted to be known for their acting, not their tits.
That's Dany.
And that's what I think this scene, that's what I thought was this scene where we saw Daario getting naked rather than her. And I don't think we'll maybe see her naked once or twice again, maybe if it's a huge plot point. But I think that was the last time we'll see that, and I think that, yeah, like you said, I think that was her.
That's a good point.
See, I saw that kind of harkening back to Khal Drogo because like I mentioned, you have
those degrading.
Well, no, we have him in the foreground with his butt out, and then we have her in the background, kind of sitting there, and we have the same thing with Khal Drogo and Daenerys when they first have their romantic sex scene when when she gets on top of him for a change. Like, he enters naked and she's sitting there. It was kind of, I thought it was a bit of a harkening back to Khal Drogo, at least a little, wink to him, maybe. Because it kind of shows her in control.
Yep.
Also, throwback to last episode with Ramsay and Theon. Ramsay checking out Theon, or his artwork on Theon.
Ooh, very true. Very true.
Very true.
LaDonna, did you have any thoughts on this first scene? Or should I address the second one first?
Well, I think that we can say that it looked like Dany was taking her power in that relationship, but I think we also have to look at it from Daario's point of view. he's been romancing her. He got exactly what he wanted. Those flowers work.
Ironically enough. Any other thoughts for this scene?
The only other thought I had for this scene is what you said last week, and that is with Tywin sending letters to the second sons, and he is a second son. So is he going to be a spy or is he a good guy?
Good thought. Very good thought. I haven't thought about that in the context of this episode either. So, any other thoughts?
I just want to add that I loved, to each their own, I loved the idea of it being a throwback to Drogon because
Drogo? Called Drogo?
Drogo. Because we get his ass and he comes in there and does whatever he wants with her, and Daario shows his ass because she's doing whatever she wants with him. And I love the idea that Eli talked about with this being a response to her having complaints about all the nudity she's having to show. To add to that,
thank you.
She is a phenomenal actress. I was worried that she was not going to ever be on the caliber with some of the actors that we've got currently in Westeros, and Barristan Selmy's one of them too. But she just, and it's really the second scene where she's dealing with Jorah, but she is superb. I loved the scene with her and Daario. Thought it was perfectly done.
Agreed. Now, I don't know, any other thoughts before I keep going? I'll take that as a no. James, you brought up this whole, I think you presented a theory of what's going to happen with Daenerys and Daario. Now, after I, recap this next scene, I do have, I guess, a thought that might contradict that, but we'll get into that when we do. So in the next scene, in the morning, we have Ser Jorah counseling Daenerys on whether it is wise to trust Daario, who, of course, killed the other captains of the Second Sons. Daenerys tells Jorah that she has ordered Daario and his army to retake Yunkai and kill all the remaining masters there. Jorah tells her that had Ned Stark taken the same approach towards him when he had sold slaves, he would not be there to advise her. And basically, she relents and orders Jorah to tell Daario to take his Darzo Lorak with him to advise the masters. Wait, did she advise Daario to bring his Dar with him? I think she did.
Yeah.
To advise the masters of Yunkai to conform to her rule, or to at least acquiesce to her rule.
She had told Daario to go kill all the masters. When Jorah convinced her otherwise, she told Jorah, go tell Daario that his Dar's going with you. Right.
So, well, I guess the reason why I thought maybe they were going in a slightly different direction with this whole setup is because, we have Daario later on in the series being sent to the Yunkai as a hostage of good faith. I thought, now maybe, they might not go this way at all, like what you're saying, James, but perhaps I thought that they would speed up the Daario-Daenerys arc, and they were going to have him, I guess, as a gesture of good faith from his Dar, they would have Daario offer himself up as a gesture of good faith or whatever, and then, his Dar would come back, and then we'd have the Daenerys Hisdar thing progress. But I guess they might not do that. I don't know. That was just my thought, because they've been speeding up the series so much that I was wondering maybe they would just speed up that whole arc. But I do agree it would be strange if they kind of skipped over the Daario-Daenerys situation. I also thought it was in. Go ahead.
I also thought that they threw that line by Jorah in about he wouldn't be there if Ned Stark practiced the same kind of ruling as she was, because pretty soon he's going to have to leave, and his slavery thing and his betrayal of Dany is going to be brought up pretty soon.
Very true.
I also like by sending both Daario, to add to what you were saying, Charlie, by sending both Daario and Hisdar. After we find out what actually is going on in Yunkai, Dany will not know whether it was Hisdar or Daario that had created the issue, which is going to be, initially it'll be okay, and then later we're going to find out that there are willing slaves, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you brought that up, because I was going to mention that it was interesting how Daenerys basically told Ser Jorah to tell Daario that he's the one who got her to change her mind, so I thought maybe they would have they would play up, I guess, a sort of pseudo-romantic rivalry between these two characters, since, of course, Jorah Mormont, is a much more rational character, as you brought up, and plays a more, I guess, emotional, or maybe not emotional, but more of an intellectual side of her relationships to men, whereas Daario is clearly the more sexual, lustful aspect.
My mom mentioned feeling the same way. Mm-hmm. I respect it. I'm of the opinion that if I were Jorah and I see Daario coming out of a room, that's just the nail in the coffin to me sleeping with her. That's just me and we haven't gotten his kiss of her, and we might get that soon, similar at a similar time that she finds out Jorah was a spy, and that would be perfectly well timed for her to think, well, this was all bullshit from the get-go. But in Jorah's mind at this point, I think he is. I don't know. Maybe you're right. I'm of the opinion that, generally speaking, Jorah's mindset is, well, I guess I really am never gonna fuck her. But she does respect me, and she's willing to show other people she respects me too. I'm cool with this. But I mean, they could still do the kiss later, so I don't know. I'm backtracking. Who knows?
As LaDonna always says, and as Jon Snow always says, we know nothing. So
that's right.
We're gonna do that because I think they kind of took care of that earlier when he kind of tried to put the make on her, and she said, "You are too familiar, sir." I don't think the kiss will happen.
No.
Yeah, I think we're past it at this point.
Yeah.
I don't have many other thoughts on this specific scene, although it would be interesting if,
Charlie?
Did we lose Charlie?
He must have gotten a phone call. I'll invite him again, and we'll wait.
Sorry, Fac, I'm back.
Oh, you're back? Okay.
I'm back. Somebody tried calling me. What was I saying? It would be interesting if, events at Yunkai kind of go the opposite direction that we expect, and if, the army were to fail and recapture the city, although I don't think that's going to be the case. It would be interesting not the recapture, but the parlaying does not succeed. It would be interesting if they went in a different direction than they do in the books, but I don't think they will. Food for thought. Any other thoughts, folks, from the scene?
I'm good.
Alrighty.
Maester Payne.
Alrighty. So, should we discuss events at, what was that location? Dragonstone. I think this is a very interesting scene, because in this scene at nighttime, Lady Selyse and Melisandre are discussing their plans to depart Dragonstone, and of course we have a very interesting. I think the way they shifted the previous scene to this scene was when Daario shows his butt, and then they have a flash to Melisandre in a bathtub with her boobs out. Quite an interesting transition, but it kind of continues that theme that I put forth of the whole mocking space bird female who is kind of mocking somebody else, but in a more sexual nature. If that makes sense. Maybe not sexual, but more like more. I don't know. Anyway, but about the scene, Selyse basically tells Melisandre that she does not want her daughter Shireen to come with them to the north, but Melisandre convinces her that the Lord of Light needs Shireen to go with them. So, there's a lot of thoughts I had about this scene. Well, a few thoughts maybe. Again, I mentioned the symbolism of the mocking space bird, and at first I also made the comment that Selyse could be interpreted as the what's that word? Not sincere, not genuine. Oh darn it, I'm blanking right now. Give me 1 second. Innocent, as the innocent image of the Mockingbird, because she's so innocently playing along with Melisandre's ideas, but of course at the end of the day she wants to kill her daughter. So maybe that thought I made in my own video earlier is not totally true and doesn't exactly reflect her. But it is interesting that Selyse and what's her name? Lysa Tully are very similar characters in many ways in terms of how they are so driven by this one individual. In one case, of course, it's the god of light / her husband, not Peter Baelish, her husband Stannis, and in the other case we have Lysa Tully, who is so driven by her own husband Peter. So just an interesting little parallel there with these two characters. But in terms of Melisandre herself, I was interested by what Melisandre put into her bath. She looks like she put a potion into her bath, and the scene kind of I don't know, it kind of ends with Melisandre discussing how all these potions are all deceptions. So it would be interesting if this, potion were a way for Melisandre to disguise her true self. I think LaDonna made the comment that her choker was a suspected item to, disguise her, and I thought the same thing for a while. And if it wasn't you, LaDonna, I apologize, but that's what I thought for a long time.
Was the ruby.
It was? Okay, the red ruby, yeah. I thought that as well, and this time we don't have her wearing that choker. But again, maybe Selyse is so driven to see what she wants to see that she'll always see Melisandre for what she is not. That is to say, a young priestess of the god R'hllor. I will say that I thought maybe this was a change to the potions that she was putting in her bathtub. You guys actually had quite a few thoughts you made in our group review that I'll let you guys bring up. The only thing I actually want to add to this scene is I wonder what their intentions are for Shireen, because they have this whole thing that they need Shireen to be brought with them, and then they look into the flames because apparently it is clear that the Lord of Light needs her. And I don't know, I read that as her being burnt or sacrificed in some way, but I'm hoping that doesn't go that way. And I think somebody else, I think it was either you, Maester Payne, or another of my commentators on my own videos made the comment that it would be interesting if they were to have Stannis defend his daughter if this were to come to this point where his wife and his priestess wanted to sacrifice his own daughter.
Sounds similar to a comment, but it wasn't a comment of mine. Sounds similar to something else.
Somebody made a comment like that. Anyway, sorry, my thoughts were kind of all over the map just here, but those
I'm pretty sure my mom has mentioned that before.
Has she? Okay, well, do you want to go first, LaDonna?
Yeah, if I could add this comment. Number one, I found it very interesting that despite the fact that most potions on her shelf are just glamours, they're trickeries, the thing she put in her bath was not. I mean, she even reacted like that's like the Catherine Bathory thing that used to bathe in virgin blood.
The Blood Countess.
Trying to maintain her immortality, she thought. The other thing is, and I think this is really important, the tale of Agamemnon and his daughter Iphigenia, I think is maybe what we're going to see play out with Stannis. Clearly, Shireen is going to be potentially used for a sacrifice, or at least that's Melisandre's plan, some blood there of king's blood. And in the tale of Agamemnon and Iphigenia, somebody says that in order for his ships to sail to Troy safely, he has to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia. And he really agonizes over it, but he ultimately does put her on something to be killed. And then at the last minute, an animal is substituted for her. So I think that clearly is playing out here. I found it interesting that there's one potion up there that's really important. I don't know if it's the one that Melisandre put in her bath or not, but she clearly told Selyse to keep her hands off of that one. And again, James, you addressed this before. Melisandre just walked her right down the path into let's use Shireen as a sacrifice. I mean, that's where she was going with it.
Did we talk about that before the video, or did we talk about that in the video?
I don't remember.
I think it was before. Yeah, it must have been before.
Okay. I'll reiterate it in a minute.
Just 1 second. I'm going to run off for a couple minutes. I think James pretty much had a better explanation of things than I did anyways, but I'm sort of on page with him for this. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
I'll reiterate what was said.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're good.
Go ahead, James.
Okay, so first of all, in the scene, Selyse is a fantastic actress. We need, if that is the ability of that actress, we need scenes like this with her. Because
she needs to be queens in more historical movies.
Yeah. Selyse can freaking act. And when she goes to reach the poison, and Melisandre says, "No, not that one," and she's like, "What?" And then she says, I've told him not to take. I've advised him not to take Selyse." And she says, "Selyse, oh no, Selyse has to come." And she goes, "Why?" I thought it was perfect. It was like, I don't want to question what you're saying. I'm just curious, but also you're going to have to justify that to me. Okay, Solis, fantastic. Charlie, on what you said about mocking Space Bird, I think it fits perfectly, at least in this one, because we start with Melisandre in a bath. She is getting too comfortable. Solis is not bathed like that, but Mel is getting too comfortable and is literally mocking, in my opinion, Solis. But even if it's more downplayed, let me relate what Maester Payne is talking about. So Melisandre tells Solis outright that I have to trick some people. I have to induce hallucinations and visions and make them scared and trick them into believing certain things and sometimes seduce them. And I use all these poisons and potions and spells for this. But you're different. You can see it for real. Well, that to me is just her mocking Solis. And that at some point during this conversation, she has drugged Solis with the possibly with what she put into her bath. And if Melisandre's been using these poisons and hallucinogens for so long, she's probably used them on herself too. And then she feeds. I hope I'm not repeating this. I hope I haven't done this already in this video. But she's leaning over in Solis's ear and whispering what she wants Solis to see. Don't you see Shireen in the fire? Don't you see that I need her? And she doesn't have to be specific. It's the same thing as her, like I said earlier, it's the same thing as somebody a psychic going up there and saying, I'm picturing someone with a first name that starts with D. Anybody? Same thing. Now, we have to consider the fact that this is a fantasy, like Martin has said, and there is magic in this world, and we know that we saw the Vag monster, so, I mean, there is real magic, but we're not getting any gods. And that means it's all going to be, all of that's a manipulation. I mean, it's possible that she even induced Davos to hallucinate during that scene, but that's impossible because the shadow monster's real. It's a real thing. It exists in this world. I don't know what it is, but it's real.
Well,
let me close out what I want to say. Shireen is a huge plot point. And more so than the books have shown us yet. I mean, we all knew it, but it never actually shows us. This scene proved it. She is a huge plot point. Obviously, to me, Melisandre is keeping her under some kind of sacrificial thing. And because she's the closest thing Melisandre now has to King's blood since Gendry has been taken away, Edric Storm. So that possibly could be it. I'm of the opinion that is actually going to happen much later, Shireen being at issue. And I think my mom specifically talked about in one of the videos it being Stannis' only emotional scene where he tries to save Shireen, if it's possible. I think it's more of a judge and jury, a typhoid Mary, grayscales breaking out, everybody's pointing the finger at Shireen, just like Val kind of did already. And we realize that it's actually somebody who is a carrier but is not showing symptoms, possibly Tyrion, who is actually the issue, and you end up with a vaccine or something like that.
Well,
Point being, Shireen's a major plot point, and I think you were going to say something about Melisandre being a manipulator, a deceiver.
Well, if I could add one more thing in, I think Shireen may end up being the corollary to the Nisa mythology.
You think she'll be the wife figure?
The what?
The wife figure to Azor Ahai?
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but I think Stannis will be put in a position where he has to make a decision about whether to allow a sacrifice to go down or not. And I don't think he'll allow it to go down, whereas in the Nisa situation, the guy did stab his wife. But if I can go back to the original thing, I don't think there's any hallucinogens going on here with Melisandre. I think
she said it in the episode. She says
not with Solis, because I think Solis would be easily workable. Her mind is so manipulatable. I just think that she was like that Melisandre was like an evangelical preacher. She's going to use fireworks and all kinds of revivalist things and whatever word she needs to say, because the ends justify the means. She's going to take Shireen or Selyse where she needs to take her. As she said, it's all good if it's in the service of the Lord of Light. She doesn't care how she gets them to the end, but she's getting them there, whatever the end is. So that was my thought. But, you know, we've seen an interview with Clarice Van Houten, or Houten, who said she's 300 years old. And she flat out came out and said, I'm 300 years old.
Agreed. And just since you mentioned that, LaDonna, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but isn't it go along the same time of the Doom of Valyria? Like, wasn't that
Very good.
It occurred parallel to each other, from what I recall?
Doesn't that kind of plays into what I was thinking before? The true believing in the Red God was the actual end of Valyria, was true belief once they all finally converted, maybe, or something along those lines, that was the Doom of Valyria.
I think they did
Right.
the Jones thing and all walked into the fire voluntarily.
Or brought the fire upon themselves, is what I was thinking.
That's what I was waiting for you to say. I wasn't sure if that's what you meant. Okay.
Yeah.
If I can add, Mom, it's not Melisandre doesn't say in an interview that she's that old. It's the guy who plays Maester Crescent who says it. Melisandre.
She says it, yeah.
Huh?
He says that she told him
Right.
to, yeah.
Right.
Just want to clarify.
Right.
The only thing I would add on that scene we were just talking about is that I kind of saw it as a microcosm of, you know, her play on Stannis. How, if you think about it, he is the most, aside from Ned, probably the most honorable man in the series as far as sticking to what he's supposed to do.
Dutiful.
Dutiful. Yeah, that's the word for it. And but look at how many things he has absolutely relinquished and or spat upon. You know, like the gods of his fathers, cheating on his wife. What's the other?
Brother.
Killing.
Yeah, murdering his brother, and not only killing him because he rose up against him, but killing him dishonorably. Not like he killed him in combat. He murdered him in the night from behind. You know, there's no honorable way of talking around that. And I just think that is kind of this is kind of a microcosm of her talking about her transformation of Stannis, where yes, this is a great man. It doesn't matter as long as I get him to his point wherever I'm trying to get him. I can get him to do terrible, terrible things along the way, you know, without him even realizing it. And he even hates it. And even at a certain point in the series, he actually chokes her, you know, which is, you know, he's choking the life out of her, which is, she could be a sorceress, but still, she's beating the shit out of a woman. So
He also tries to apologize to his wife,
yeah,
who sanctions it. But you know, he certainly, I mean, if we have to compare and contrast him to Ned walked the walk, whether we think maybe he was too black and white, but he walked the walk. Stannis knows what the walk is, and he's trying to get there, but everything he does is against what he thinks is correct.
Yeah, as long as it feeds into his ending game, he doesn't care whose toes he steps on along the way. That's what bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, he has disgraced everything he's ever believed in and ever followed in order to, because of that dutiful thing.
Eli, I'm going to tell Tony on you.
No, I know. No, I know. He's watching. Don't worry.
He's watching.
Sure.
Tony sees all.
But I just don't understand, how can you follow a guy who has betrayed everything he believes in?
No comment. On my part, anyway.
Yeah,
I had a thought
weird.
on the parallel between Selyse and Lysa I want to bring up. If anybody else had any thoughts first, though, I'll let you guys go ahead.
I want to add that they're noting in the comments, thank y'all, y'all are awesome. I think it's Angus10 is noting it. Ghost was locked up in the books because he kept getting in fights with the boar.
That's right.
And they're not going to do the boar. By the way, random comment, I think at the end of this, we're probably going to get Tyrion riding a boar. We've already got him riding pigs, and pigs turn. And we've even got a guy with a boar. But they're not going to do it in the TV show. Same reason they didn't have the pigs at the feast, or the purple wedding.
Are there any versions of a dire boar north of the wall, like a great boar?
I
That
like
would be
That would be awesome.
hilarious.
I want I want Ghost to meet his father.
That'd be very
right, the father direwolf.
I mean, there's got to be a male direwolf up there somewhere.
I like that. That's pretty cool.
Whose wolf is that? That's a great question.
That's a very good question. Something I never even thought of ever.
Yeah, never crossed my mind until just now, LaDonna. That's brilliant.
I love that. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Roundhouse agreement. If I could,
Now you got me
if I could
thinking
bring
about
up
the
my
stag. I'm sorry. Like, where's the
yeah,
stag
same.
from? You know,
Charlie.
Just a very small thought, because I brought up the whole parallel between Selyse and Lysa Tully, and they're both very similar characters in how they are blindly dedicated to some individual or some faith, I guess, in these two cases. But with the case of Lysa, of course, she dies by being pushed out of the moon gate or the moon door, and it was very interesting because House Arryn, the house that not that she necessarily belongs to, but the house that she protects and seems to associate with so much by remaining atop of the Eyrie, that imagery of wind, if I can use that idea, it's interesting how she died by that very same, I guess, element, if that makes sense. She fell through the sky. Well, I wonder if Selyse, in her dedication for fire and for the fire god R'hllor, if she might not die by being burnt alive. Just a small thought.
You have a point.
I like that.
Point.
Elemental associations there. I don't know.
I certainly
That
think
was it.
the only thing
Selyse.
go ahead.
James?
Oh, okay. The only thing I would.
Go ahead, Eli. Go ahead. Forget that.
Okay, sorry. The only thing I would add to that was kind of something I forgot to add on the end of that was kind of like with Stannis, because one of the things that I agree with you guys that she clearly wants to. I think at least that she wants to sacrifice his daughter at some point. I don't know, but I assume that. But I think that, and now we see in the books that he's separated while she is left there with the girl. And instead of Melisandre, I could see Stannis like, I'm sorry.
You're gonna take your time.
Stopping the sacrifice of his daughter, and in turn being sacrificed him, maybe not himself, but you know what I mean, like paying for it because he won't let that sacrifice happen. Maybe himself or maybe Melisandre herself. But yeah, I kind of see that along those lines.
It's a great idea.
Him trying to stop that.
Maybe that'll be Stannis' redemption.
Yeah, exactly.
And his death, and he trades a whole kingdom for one life. He was arguably everybody's pro him, but he must save his daughter, so he sacrifices himself. And I think
he openly stated before that he refuses to let any harm come to her. Yeah.
And in the same way Selyse is devoted 100% to this religion, I think it's possible that she would sacrifice herself. But I think it makes a whole lot of sense for an issue between Melisandre and Stannis to tear Selyse apart and for her to have to make a decision. Because if you asked a TV viewer or book reader right now, who does Selyse care about more, Melisandre or Stannis? I'm not sure there's a clear answer to that.
Yeah, faith or duty.
Yeah. I forget what I was going to say. Don't remember. No worries.
It happens. Any other thoughts on this scene, folks?
No.
Going once, going twice, gone. Alrighty, so I guess we can move along to events on the King's Road and the Riverlands. I guess we'll talk about the King's Road first. I think we might get through that one a little faster than the next one. But on the King's Road, we have Brienne and Pod, who are eating at an inn, and they are served by Hot Pie, who makes a new appearance this season. I was really happy to see him again for sure. When Brienne basically inquires about Sansa Stark, Hot Pie nervously ends their conversation. But before they depart, Hot Pie tells them about his journey with Arya, who was believed to be dead, having not been seen since her father's execution. Podrick also relays to Brienne that Lysa, Arryn, and Sansa and Arya's last living relative with money and so they basically seem to decide to go and head for the Vale. My thought, and like I've always think it's really role reversals with these characters, and it seems like not only with Brienne and Pod, but also with the Hound and Arya, there's some semblance of this too, where the female character seems to have, especially in this episode, seems to have some kind of power over the male counterpart, which is quite interesting. And even this whole thing with Brienne and Pod, I really felt that Brienne came across almost like a worry, or like not a worrying father, but like she felt a lot like a dad in terms of their interaction, a father and son for some reason. And I don't know if you guys agreed with me on that, but the way she kind of tells Pod, no more silk linens for you. We got to make a man out of you, and we're going to do all these things. I don't know. I kind of saw that parallel with that scene. Like I said, I think the best part of the scene is when we get to see Hot Pie, and it was awesome how he even quotes Gendry by stating that most people wearing armor are knights, which I loved, and I love that little arcing back to that character who, at least we know he's somewhere out there, even though we haven't seen him in a while.
I agree.
Yeah,
we
lose Charlie?
We lost him. He got another phone call. Oh, here he goes.
Sorry, another phone call. Yeah, I can reconnect easily. Sorry, guys. Same person keeps calling. I'll have to call her back after. What was I saying? Yeah, basically my thoughts on that scene. Yeah, I can't remember what else I was going to say, but I think that pretty much covers it, though. So,
well,
not a lot saying this scene.
We got the scene outside where he comes out and he tells them the deal, and then Brienne says, "What were you saying?" Basically, to I don't know. Is my camera messing up? What's going on?
You're fine with me.
Okay. I loved Hot Pie. I think a lot of the viewers had an issue with it because it seemed really what they call incestual, the idea that the show's just kind of feeding into itself. But that's also the Inn at the Crossroads sort of. It's called the Inn at the Crossroads, is where everybody.
Is that what we are? Sorry, but that is the Inn at the Crossroads, right?
I believe so. That's where he was left.
Yeah, I thought too.
Which has been it keeps changing hands, but it's always at the center of everything.
Yeah.
And I bet that's been going on for centuries. So, or as long as it's existed. I really liked it. I liked Brienne's passion for going after Sansa. This was the first scene we really got to see that, because she's willing to just straight up say it. I swore, Catelyn, I would bring Sansa back. I like the idea that they're introducing the aspect of Arya, because we really didn't get that in the books very much. But it really drives the point of it really was the Hound, in my opinion. So she knows that Arya is alive, and she thinks, and she knows that the Hound is with Arya. The Hound is the key, and she's obviously headed to the Eyrie. I think the real question that arises, and my mom and I had a huge disagreement about it yesterday, I think the real question that arises. All right, so we all know that at the end of the third book we get Lady Stoneheart, and at the end of the fourth book, I believe it is, we get Brienne. Is it fourth? It's fourth book. Brienne being captured by Lady Stoneheart, and we also know from interviews with Martin that she survives that because of the sword. Well, I think it is entirely possible that. The scene where we get this might take a little while, so give me a second. The scene in the books where we get Merritt Frey in the epilogue of Clash of Kings, Merritt Frey getting captured, and he's like, "Where am I going? Let me speak to the person in charge. I could tell I wasn't involved. I had nothing to do with this." She don't speak. But she remembers, and then we get him killed. The viewers don't give a fuck. They don't know who Merritt Frey is. They don't have. I can't name a single character that they've introduced in the show that can fill that role.
If I can add, unless they kill off one of his main sons. Go ahead.
They could bring a son in, but it's still the whole point is that Merritt Frey is not guilty. He was not there. He had nothing to do with it, and there is not a character I think that we can associate with the phrase, but also say was innocent. I think it is entirely possible that we get the Merritt Frey scene, but instead of it being Merritt Frey, it's Brienne. And we go ahead and get the introduction of Lady Stoneheart scene with Merritt Frey, and mix it with the Brienne scene of her getting captured. And you start next season with her saying sword to get out of it. It's the first scene you get. Sword. Oh. And that gets her and Pod out of the situation. And then all of the things that you have from Brienne in the fourth book and the third book before she meets Lady Stoneheart, you just have it all happen after she meets Lady Stoneheart.
I completely disagree with that.
I'm not saying it will happen, just an idea.
Why would she be hanging Brienne?
Because Brienne has not brought her Sansa.
I don't think it's going to happen that way, with all due respect to you, James, because he and I did have a major disagreement last night.
Uh-oh.
One that you did not want to televise, okay?
One we don't have time for.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that? Oh, that's hilarious, Charlie.
But sorry, LaDonna.
I don't think it's going to go down the way James says it, because I think we need to see a gradual progression before, and we need to see how tough Catelyn Stark is before Brienne hits her. It makes it more epic.
Let me add real quick that we do know without a doubt that there's a fight scene with Brienne that has not happened yet, because Brienne in the preseason interviews was like, they were like, what's the best thing you've done? If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, y'all need to watch it.
Oh yeah, I love that.
It's really cute, because Brienne is very happy to have this role, or the actress is very happy to have this role. But she says, I bit off somebody's ear and just bit it in his face, and she's all happy about it. It's really funny, but that has not happened.
That's so true.
Could it be with Nimbledick?
Huh?
Like, not with Nimbledick, but with the events with Nimbledick. Because I read a bit of the Brienne part. So when they're at the, what is it, the crag or
guard?
Remind me, who's Nimbledick?
He's the guy that's...
Say that again, Charlie. I'm sorry.
Dick Crab? Dick Crab.
Drake.
What?
Beardless Dick.
Fearless Dick?
Beard.
Beardless Dick almost sounds like a porno name too. Let's take it easy, guys.
I thought I was hearing things.
No, we got Nibble Dick and Beardless Dick. Let's take it easy, guys. This is for kids. Come on.
Oh, it's a bit too late for that, I think. I think we're a bit too late for that.
If I can also add a couple things about this scene, I absolutely loved the fact that Brienne ran across...
Nimble Dick. You're right. Sorry. Dick Crab, better known as Nimble Dick, a former soldier, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I have Beardless Dick up here, though.
That's the guy, too.
Okay, there's two of them. Okay, I'm all confused.
Either way, that guy loses.
What did you say a minute ago, Maester Payne? If you would please repeat what you said.
Well,
sorry, yeah.
They run into, I forget who the guys are. I think it's actually Rorge and Biter.
It is.
Brienne actually fights them when she's with Nimbledick. Nimbledick gets killed. But that, I'm thinking that might be her battle. I'm not sure.
Well, Rorge is dead and Biter is dead, so I.
Yes.
But I wanted to say this. You know, Catelyn Stark told Brienne when she swore her allegiance to her that you will always have a place at my table, and I think that's going to. I think Brienne's going to survive it, and Hot Pie's going to survive it. Come on, I think he's going to be the cook at Winterfell or wherever the hell they end up, and she will be eating his food there. But I love the fact that he has actually perfected his meat pies, and that he has a damn good wheat bread. That bread looked good.
Good.
It was pretty impressive. That was a piece of art.
But he's still a dumbass. Because he's still at Winterhell. He still calls it Winterhell, and as Charlie has said, he still asks, "Are you a knight?" Well, he's already been told by Gendry, not everybody who wears armor is a knight.
I love the Winterhell bit. That's Ice and Fire play.
And Mama, I want to I want to hear what mirroring you believe will occur based on the extremely important lines, "Never give up on the gravy."
I think that was one of the most important lines of the whole time, the whole season.
Really, I want to hear this.
I think never give up on the gravy means that there is a light ahead, that there is goodness. There's the good stuff waiting for you just around the bend if you just keep trying.
I like that.
I kind of took it as it's not about the ingredients, it's about how it happens. You know, that's the gravy, you know.
Right.
Well, and maybe
It's about the journey, not the end goal, end result.
Yeah, kind of like that.
It could be that too.
That's
I like
just
LaDonna's reading it.
I
More
never thought
optimistic.
of it until that. I'd never thought of it until you just brought it up.
I like, with all due respect to you, I like the idea that there is some optimism, that there will be a ray of hope at the end of this.
Likewise.
Gravy.
Well, the last book is called A Dream of Spring, I think, and I think that's somewhat hopeful in no sense.
I
The title.
I thought it was a dream of gravy.
New title, they're reworking it. Any other thoughts on this scene, folks?
Yeah, I want to know which road they took. James and I had a huge fight over this.
They took the road to the Eyrie.
That's
They
what
went
I
to
thought.
it's actually obvious if you look at the map and the way they were going. Northwest is to the Erie, and northwest is the way they went.
Okay.
No, northeast is the Erie.
Yeah, that's northeast, right? More than
Yeah.
I think that's what he meant.
Yeah,
Yeah, my fault. Yeah.
it's all good.
I remember working it out because I saw this debate online, and I remember going back and watching the scene and being like, wait, no, they went the right way. We're good.
See, this is one of those moments where they should have had a signpost that said, "This is
Yeah.
Yuri," just to point it
It
out.
was just so easy. Scratched out.
Charlie, the Hound already told Arya, if you see a map shop, let me know.
Right. Touche.
That
I like...
the crossroads there is a very significant part of the whole story.
No question about it.
Martin has said, well, the characters have said that. Oh crap! I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, well,
That's the worst when it happens.
Hey, MP, I know what you're going to say, and you can say it, but I'm going to lead you there. In the fourth book, they talk about the history of the Inn at the Crossroads a lot. I think it's when Gendry is there with the children that are all over the place, and they talk about all the names and the people who have owned it before. It's been there a long time.
I think the one thing you can
Didn't
remember is when they talked about Ned early in the book, when it's one of his kids talking to him, but he says, "My father always said the map is one thing, the land is another." Because there are tons of things on the land that are not on maps and things, you know, there's not people, you know, like there's those people in the north that are never on the maps, you know.
Right. Just something LaDonna said, though, wasn't that same inn featured in A Tale of Dunk and Egg, where Dunk stops during his journey to the Harrenhal?
I'm pretty sure it's the inn that he meets.
Or not Harrenhal, but yeah. That's right, yeah, that's what I thought, too, where he meets Egg.
Good point.
And it's where Catelyn abducts Tyrion and fools him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We're going to Winterfell, but really they're going to the Vale, which I think has tons of foreshadowing to where the story goes. And I think it plays with what James and LaDonna are saying, that a whole bunch of shit's going to happen at the Vale.
That one inn has seen a lot of historical events happen in this series, I'll tell you.
And there aren't any stories about it, except for the ones we know.
Precisely.
Love it.
Any other thoughts on the King's Road?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Yes.
Second to last location is events at the Riverlands, and of course, I'm sure LaDonna's favorite scene.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Can I jump in real quick?
Go for it.
I was jumped out for a second. Were we just talking about the? Was that the Hound and Arya scene?
No, we're about to talk about that.
Okay, never mind. Then we're good. My fault.
No worries. So Arya and the Hound continue their journey east. Along the way, they come upon a badly wounded man, whom the Hound kills out of mercy. Immediately after, they are attacked by Biter and Rorge. Biter attacks the Hound, biting his neck before the Hound kills him. I think we snapped his neck, if I recall. It looked pretty brutal. Arya, after learning Rorge's name, then stabs him in the heart, killing him. Later, while the Hound tries to stitch his neck wound, Arya tries to cauterize the wound, but the Hound pyrophobia, I guess, prevents her from helping him. He tells her that the story about his brother Gregor causing his facial burn is in fact true, and she assists him in stitching up the bite without using fire to I guess numb it or disinfect it. Cauterize, that's right. Sorry, I went through all the events and these various scenes all at once, but I do have a few thoughts on this events. I know a lot of people were wondering, or actually were asking LaDonna specifically where, the Arya and Hound adventures are going to go, but I have a thought of my own on that, which I will bring up. I will say, first of all, I was very intrigued by the line Arya delivered to the dying man. I read it to some degree a certain way, but I'm sure you guys have way more creative thoughts on it. The line, of course, is nothing is better or worse than anything. Nothing is just nothing. And it's interesting that she says this is because, obviously she's seemingly losing her, not her, I don't know how to say this. I guess it's speaking more towards her mental state, if that makes sense, which is evidenced by the fact that, she tells the dying man of her original home, Winterfell, of course, and that she's a Stark. But at the same time, I think it really hints at things to come for Arya when she goes to Braavos and so on and so forth. Well, I guess we could just address this first scene here with the dying man. How about that? We can talk about the other stuff later because there's a lot here to cover. So how about the scene with the dying man? And, of course, with Rorge and Biter. I will bring this up right now, actually, then. Never mind. Sorry. I'm kind of all over the map, guys. We have this whole thing with Rorge and Biter showing up and Biter biting the Hound. And I know they've changed this from the books where, of course, Brienne is the one who receives the bite. But in this case, I was quite surprised that they had Biter, be the one to attack the Hound. And I think they're going to use this because, how to put this? I really think they are going to, what was the line? They brought up. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's this whole thing about. Well, actually, you hit what I was going to say. I think they're going to use this bite as potentially having the Hound gain an infection because they didn't, clear the wound up properly. And I was going to actually bring up Khal Drogo, who died of a similar wound. Right. And I think they're going to go this way, obviously, well, for a few reasons, because we also have the Mountain, who, of course, is going to get poisoned in the next episode by Oberyn Martell. And I think it would be really interesting if they had, if they had the Mountain and the Hound both dying or suffering at the same time by a similar fatality, by being poisoned, although in very different ways. And of course, it's interesting because both of these characters, they gain a sort of a rebirth later on, where the Hound becomes the Gravedigger as his new persona, whereas the Mountain, although he does die, he does become reborn as Sir Robert Strong, which I think is why they're going in this direction. At least that's what I kind of read from it. I don't know. It sounds like you, James, you're agreeing with me on this point, but I think they are paralleling these two brothers very strongly in this series. So I guess that was my thoughts on all that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Joel,
I agree.
Yeah. About the Rorge and Biter thing, I thought it was a little odd that Biter attacked first. My mom was more adamant about that when we talked last night, but that it's odd that Biter would attack him in such a strange way. But honestly, he was probably pretty damn close to an artery, and his name's Biter, so he's probably used to biting people. That's just his thing. So, I mean, it's not that big of a change.
No, there's no saving that scene. There is no saving that attack. There's no describing that attack in any way. So other than the fact that his name was Biter, there's no reason why a grown man, when another man right beside him has a sword in his hand, walked up and stabbed the Hound in the spine.
Eli, the counter to that would be that Biter wanted the money himself rather than Rorge have it. But I know what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, but it was obviously, to me, a throwback to us. It's because we know.
Calling him Biter.
It's because we know that there's this character named Biter who's never been mentioned.
Terrible in my mind. I hate it.
That's fair enough. But one of you talking about the speech Arya gives. This is the first time we've heard her say her name in a long time, or anything having to do with Stark. So I think that was, Tully was the last name she used to protect herself. I think that was huge, and it'll probably be the last time we see her admitting who she is, and I think that's why they did that. I think that is she will come really close at some point, and I don't think it'll happen.
Agree.
But one of the huge things we got in this was, and I agree with you, what we're going to end up, we have gotten everything that has happened to Arya and the Hound taken care of, with the two exceptions, and that is, one, him opening up to her. I should have fucked her bloody and left her and ripped her heart out before I left her for that imp. And the second thing is her leaving him for dead. Well, they perfectly set it up, because the scene where, and you're going to talk about it in a minute, but the scene where they talk to each other and the Hound opens up in this episode, we have come to realize that he is empathetic. So when he uses those lines in the episode later, I should have fucked her bloody and ripped her heart out before I left her for that imp, the viewer who hasn't read the book is going to know that that's something different. That's not what he means. He means something different. And they'll be able to read through it. And my mom and I were sincerely worried before that they couldn't pull those lines off. Go watch the Hound video. But they've done it. The other thing that's really important about this scene is we watched the Hound appreciate what it means to give mercy. And we watch Arya appreciate what it means to give mercy. So that later, when the Hound prods her, asks her for it, and then prods her to give it to him, she refuses. And that's her vengeance on him. She doesn't kill him, but she leaves him for dead. And that was perfectly set up in this scene. The next time, and so we're going to see, the next time we see Arya and the Hound is going to fucking fall off his horse, just like Khal Drogo did. We might get a little bit before that about him growing weak, a split-second scene. But that's really the only scene we have left. And then him saying, I'm fucking dying. He's going to be pale as shit, and we're going to know he's dying. And he's going to say, kill me now. Because that is the law, other than fucking cancer, chemotherapy, and horrible thing that is generally the long-term painful fucking death. An infection is extremely painful, and it's all over your body, and you lose the ability to move, and then you normally die. And it's also something you can not die from, which is why it's perfect for this scene. Also, her chapter where she's called Mercy means a lot more to me now that I've seen this in front of me, rather than it be a chapter in a book.
Okay.
And done.
Great thoughts.
Now, I have thoughts, and they kind of center around the old man. It's kind of my big pull from the whole series, or from the whole episode. But he stopped asking a while ago who's right, who's wrong, everybody's the same. I think that's sort of that everybody's blended together. But where is it here? He says to her, there's no balance. There's no balance anymore.
Yeah.
Come on, can we?
I picked up on the symbolism of the horses, Arya and the Hound. That's yin and yang, right? You actually pretty much.
Their horses are white and black. Good point.
Right. Now, so this was a minor takeaway that I had. I thought, okay, well, Arya and the Hound, it's neat how they are switching with each other. But I looked up yin and yang, and it gets way better. So I'm going to read this to you guys, so hold on for a second.
Okay.
In Chinese philosophy, yin and yang, which are often shortened to yin-yang or yin-yang, are concepts used to describe how apparently opposite or contrary forces are actually complementary, interconnected, and interdependent in the natural world, and how they give rise to each other as they interrelate to one another. Many tangible dualities, such as light and dark, high and low, hot and cold, fire and water, life and death, male and female, sun and moon, and yada, yada, yada. But then I started thinking about the black and white aspect, which we know Martin's always said that he hated all the imitators, the white cloaks, always being the good guys. the Black Cloaks, the bad guys. We have the Night's Watch, all dressed in black, fighting the White Walkers, but we have the King's Guard, all dressed in white. We have symbolism like the House of Black and White. We have Jon Snow and his dog. It's just the black and white thing, the yin yang is, and then we touched on it earlier, but that whole comet in the sky being made of ice, even though it's on fire, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed with it, yeah, but it kind of plays along with that is in this scene that I thought was kind of played into my, or hearkened, as you so eloquently used earlier, back to my theory that I used in that, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, my big endgame theory about balance, which he actually verbatim used the word balance, and then he specifically states that, who did this to you? I stopped asking. Like, it doesn't matter at this point. It doesn't matter. The brand, and I think this could be me taking it to my own, but I think that means that the North is not good, the South is not good. You know, they're not good. You know, once you're the people, it's not good either way. And it kind of plays into that where he says, who did this to you? And he says, I stopped asking. Like, and then he reiterates that same thing that I said before about it's all about balance. And he says, we now live in a world without balance. That's the one. That was his last line, and I was just like, my theory is solidified after that guy's, because that guy's survival, aside from the heart, where the heart is, served no purpose. So that guy's everything he said had to play either into the overarch or have no meaning whatsoever. Which I think he was just generally speaking.
The heart thing, it did have the mimicking. Seeing Arya copy the Hound when she wipes her blade.
Yeah, that was the only thing which I had not noticed until whoever brought it up in this.
LaDonna had seen it earlier.
Yeah, when they said the doing the same, I was like, yeah, I forgot about the wiping. That is the one thing I could get from that. But I thought that was his purpose, and that was to kind of give an overarching what the people think of this dilemma, because they don't hold any. The people themselves, because you got to think that the people themselves would not hold any really likeness to Ned Stark any more than they would Joffrey. You know, they haven't necessarily been wronged by either of them. You know, so it's more of their situation.
I agree.
And to add Maester Payne, I think, great point, Eli. I agree. When you said it before, Maester Payne, what you just read is perfect. Somebody in the comments mentioned the balance possibly having to do specifically, more rather than broadly, with there not being a Stark in Winterfell. But playing on what you've said, there is no way, arguably, to have a perfect society. So the only thing you can have is balance. There's going to be bad, and there's going to be good. And we had a balance for a while, sort of, as long as Robert was king. The goal, but at the end of this, there will be balance one way or another, and that could be, I mean, who the fuck knows? But
Tyrion?
Martin's not going to end this with. Martin said he's been asked so many times, how is it going to end? He just tells people the last book is going to be 1,000 pages of ice and wind. But I mean, we don't know. Even when I say it out loud, I'm thinking, oh no, it's not. But I mean, we really don't know. Wouldn't it be hilarious if he gave
you're
us...
still trying to interpret it in your head. Yeah.
He showed us what could have happened to be good, and then like destroyed it and said, but here's the mistake we made. But what you said is exactly right. There is always a balance, but there is always change. And it's just a matter of where the chips fall. And the whole point at the end is to show us the horrible balance that could occur, that the hole we'll never dig ourselves out of, or the best we can possibly have balance. I know it's not going to last forever, but it's going to last a long time, and it's as good as it can get.
Keep what we have for as long as we can have it.
and we're going to watch. And the beauty is that every single character we see in those power roles where we go, oh, that's perfect, oh, that's perfect, we have watched them for 7 books. We're going to know exactly who they are as individuals and to each other. I'm waxing out of my fucking mind. But
we all are at this point.
Yeah.
did we get to the second part of the Arya and the Hound?
Yeah, I kind of addressed it all at once.
Okay.
Go.
I actually had a tear come down my cheek when I watched the Tyrion thing, but I basically teared up when the Hound gives his speech and then he pauses. And the wind, I mean, I don't know how they timed it right, maybe I'm just imagining it, but they timed it perfectly where he just stops and it's like, woosah, in the wind.
Did you just drop a woosah reference?
I did.
Did you really?
I actually
Rub
walked
your
out.
earlobes. You gotta rub your earlobes. Woosah.
You ever been bumped by a man? You want to?
That's hilarious.
All right, so I wanted to point out something in favor of my mama. I don't know if y'all remember, but she was saying she was talking about the importance of the Hound and smell. I never saw the Targaryen babes, never touched them, never smelled them, never held them, bawling. And she's talked about the importance of, I mean, he's the Hound. It makes sense, but he's the only character we really get anything like that from. He says it all over again. The worst part was the smell when he got burned. And the reason I teared up at the end of that little bit was the balance he has found. I mean, he's real close to getting it. Well, he doesn't know what he wants in life, but his brother's an asshole, and he's a good killer, the Hound. But he's chosen to only hate his brother, and he seems like he hates everything, but he's chosen only to hate his brother. But we got from him what I never felt like we got in the show about his family. From how he was acting, and for all we know, it's just the actor. But he says the worst thing is it was my brother, and my father covered it up. And then we get the reaction, the reaction in his visage. But to me, it appeared as if he had long ago forgiven his father. I mean, what are you supposed to do with your son? But it hurt nonetheless, and I don't think he could ever forgive his brother. And I bet you there's more stuff having to do with his brother. I'm sure my mom's going to expand upon that.
Oh, this is my favorite scene.
Okay.
It's mine too.
And he also doesn't have any armor on, which I'm sure my mom liked very much. So we finally get him opening up, and he doesn't have, and he's got his undershirt on, which, by the way, to me is blatantly showing us he will be fucking Sansa at some point, because that's the only time he's ever gonna have his shirt off.
Don't use the F word. They're going to make love.
Well, you don't always have to fuck her hard. In fact, sometimes it's not right to do it. But sometimes you got to make some love. And fucking give her some smooches too.
Okay. Can we say some things now?
I'm done.
Okay, I want to say some things about that.
Go for it, LaDonna.
First of all, you know, as much as Tony Teflon is a Stannis man, I'm like 20,000 times a Hound girl. So I just want to say this.
We all have our teams.
I realize
With Danny over your shoulder.
Sorry, LaDonna, we interrupted you.
Go ahead, go on, obsess over Danny. It's okay.
No, you obsessed over the Hound. Do it.
It's your turn to shine.
First of all, I didn't know that Rory McCann was that good of an actor. I thought he nailed it. And I think it was such a great chemistry between, and non-sexual chemistry, but a great chemistry between he and Arya. And he didn't have armor on, which was metaphorical for him being able to let his hair down and tell a story. And also the fact that he kind of turns away from her and goes like that, like, it's okay, you can touch me to help me, because How many people have ever touched the Hound like that, guys? Nobody. And she's got her little hands on his neck, touching him. Nobody's touched him like that in probably 20 years. So I thought it was very tender, and I think it is also a scene that's going to be mirrored later with Sansa and him in some way. I think that I liked also that it was done out in the open because they're being very open. It's not in an enclosed space. I don't know if they intended that. And I just thought it was beautifully done. And I don't think he's going to last much longer.
I love what you guys were saying about the armor metaphor. That's pretty cool.
I wish he had his whole shirt off, but okay, I'll deal with just the armor. You guys can obsess over tits and ass all you want. This is my one.
You know what my mom told me? You know what? We were going over the scenes last night, and we were talking about Daario and Dany, and she goes, "No dick shot. No dick shot."
Hasn't happened since the season one.
And I told her, we haven't gotten a vag shot either.
Yeah.
But we actually have gotten dick shots in the TV show. We got to see Theon's penis.
Theon.
Yeah.
Really big penis.
So you're winning, LaDonna. You shut up. you got your D shot.
You got a bad shot.
Horror scene? Did they do the horror scene or did they not in the show?
No, you did kind of see. I mean, you saw like the outside of a vagina during like the brothel scenes, didn't you?
I wasn't really turning this into a debate, guys.
No, I'm not trying to turn this into like a who was pregnant and who wasn't. But...
I'm curious. I don't think we've ever actually seen any part of the labia.
Well,
ever.
no.
They
not gonna...
shot the vag.
No.
They shot the vag monster birth, but they kind of
the vag monster birth. I'm so sorry.
Well, they're not gonna have somebody spread eagle randomly in front of the camera. It just seems a little bit too gratuitous, even for HBO.
That's the word. That's the word for
I'm
it.
just saying.
I was telling somebody today that A Song of Ice and Fire is the best porn there is because it's just a mind fuck.
It's just it's awesome.
Well played.
very true.
Should we move on to the next scene?
The only thing I was gonna throw in, this was still the her killing George scene, Rorge scene, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically.
The only thing I would add to that is I really hated having Arya staring at him with her sword in her sheath. He's got his sword in his hand, and she has time to draw her sword, step back, and stab him in the heart. Without him, he never even made a flinch. That was the dumbest shit I've ever seen. I'm sorry.
I respect your opinion on the Rorge thing. I disagree with you entirely on that because the point is her sword is not a long sword. It can go directly into where it's not. It doesn't take too much for her to poke him, and he's not wearing any armor.
If it was already drawn, but he has his sword in his hand like this, holding it right here, and he can't.
Well, I think she is limited in her capability as a non-actual character in the book, but I think we're meant to think of her going, thank you, that fast. I think it's meant to be something Rorge could not have prepared for.
I felt the same way Eli felt. I thought it was poorly blocked.
Yeah.
You got that from a different...
he should have... She should have had the sword in her hand already. There's no way a person can reach down. I don't care how fast they are. Someone has a sword in their hand. You cannot reach down, grab your sword, draw it from its sheath, and then stab them in the heart before they have a chance to even swing.
But Eli, she was water dancing.
She was water dancing.
You're a threat.
Maester, what?
Sorry?
I said, you probably can when you're an 11-year-old girl because the guy's not looking at you like you're a threat. He's just, there's some little kid standing in front of me. So element of surprise is definitely there.
That's a good point.
Good thought.
If she has a sword on her side and is staring at you asking about killing you, I don't think it's a surprise. She's asking about killing you.
And is it?
She said killing you before.
Is it just me, or are they really playing up the? And we'll move on in a second. I know that's what we're waiting on. But is it me, or is they're really playing up more so? They're playing it up more so than the books that she wants to know somebody's name. I mean, we never really get a scene in her of the books where she's like, I need to know their name before I kill them. But
Yeah.
they're obviously doing that so that later the Faceless Men, they can be like, you cannot kill anybody of who that you know their name.
Well,
Yeah.
we got Jaqen because Jaqen said, I can't kill a guy unless you give me his name. So Arya's mimicking that too. That's another model.
Okay.
Yeah, they're trying. I think they're trying to quietly tell us the rules of the Faceless Men. Quietly, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alrighty, we had some great discussion for this scene, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
I was also reading a few of the comments. MITM Adamsville had an interesting thought about, well, the genital discussion. Anyway, back to
doing gold.
he mentioned Hodor during season 2, I believe. Or was it season 1?
Yeah.
Season 1. Anyway, back to events that matter. In the Vale, we can go on to that scene. So Sansa builds a replica of Winterfell out of snow in a small courtyard. Robin comes out and asks her what that is before he then suggests that she add a moon door to her model of Winterfell. When he reaches towards the model, he knocks part of it over, and Sansa tells him he ruined it, and in a fit of rage, Robin kicks the model before Sansa basically slaps him. And then he runs away. Shortly thereafter, Peter Baelish shows up and discusses his true motives with Sansa before kissing her right in front of Lady Lysa Arryn. And having witnessed that, she confronts Sansa near the moon door, and it looks like she grabs Sansa and is going to force her out of the door before Peter arrives and promises to send Sansa away, which causes Lysa to release Sansa, and Peter goes to her, and he admits he had only ever loved one woman, who is, of course, her sister, before she's pushed out of the moon door. So I had a few thoughts on this scene. I thought the discussion between Sansa and little Robin Arryn was interesting. I loved the part where they were talking about punishing people, and he even mentioned at one point, when we get married, you can tell me if you don't like somebody, and we can bring them back, and whoosh, right through the moon door, which is something that clearly pleased Sansa on some level. Of course, I made this comment before, but Sansa looked so much like her mother, Catelyn Stark, in the scene. The way she dressed, the way she almost presented herself, it was very, very Catelyn-esque, and I got that sense immediately from the get-go when I saw her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Peter Baelish clearly did as well, considering he went over to kiss her. And somebody actually in my video made a comment that it seemed like he had done that intentionally to have Lysa watching, like he knew she was watching in order to set that all up, which is a total possibility. Also, Taryn Andrews mentioned in my video that she kind of saw this Sansa slapping Robin as a comparison to Marjorie and Tommen, which I thought was quite interesting because, although they're betrothed in a sense, Marjorie uses more of a seductive role, where Sansa becomes more forceful in her approach to Robin. And I thought that was a neat, analogy that she made. I also started to think a bit about, the dynamic between Sansa and Robin, because in the books, Robin, he has all these other issues. I think he has like epilepsy, if I recall, or some kind of physiological disorder, if I recall. But here he just seems like a spoiled brat. And Peter Baelish makes the comment that he just hasn't been raised properly, and that somebody had to slap him at some point. So it would be interesting, if Sansa were to grow on Robin and become like a mother figure to him, which of course she does at some point. But it would be interesting if given that we know Peter Baelish wants to kill Robin, that Sansa were to ultimately defend him against her fake father, or fake uncle in this case, but the person who is trying to work for her. But I don't know, I just thought that would be interesting if at the end of the day Robin were to survive. And I think we mentioned this in another video with LaDonna, how it would be interesting if Robin were to grow up to be a great ruler of the Vale. Should be a neat twist. And speaking of you, LaDonna, you actually asked this question in our last video about how they're going to explain Lysa's death. And to be honest, after seeing this scene and after recalling something that Lysa said in a previous episode, I don't think that the Lords of the Vale really care at the end of the day. And I think that they make this really obvious in the show when Lysa basically states that they're all out to get her and she wants them away. So I don't think her death is going to be that troubling to the Lords of the Vale. And of course, we already know that Peter Baelish has orchestrated some form of agreement with them over the succession of the Lordship of the Vale. So I think that's how they're more or less going to deal with that. I don't think they're going to have any scapegoats per se. They might just say she fell at the door. That's just my hunch at first glance. at this scene, of course. And last thing I want to say is, of course, the whole Mockingbird analogy with Sansa here. You know, an innocent, sweet girl, the only seemingly innocent, female who adopts a really female role in this whole episode. Is really emphasized, you know, how she wasn't trying, like she keeps telling the truth and she keeps claiming innocence and honesty, but she keeps having the rough end of the bargain, except for at the very end when, you know, of course, Lysa gets pushed out. I think I've discussed enough, and we've all discussed enough of the symbolism of the Mockingbird in this context with Peter Baelish, so I'll just leave it at that. And I think that concludes my thoughts for this scene specifically, so I'll let you guys provide your input now. Who wants to go first?
I know my mom's holding something back, so I would like to go before her.
All right, Maester, go for it.
What I took away was, which I mean I had before, but I think it's good to point out that I think this is the origin of Peter, was when Hoster Tully refused to, you know, even consider him as a mate for Catelyn. I think that's sort of what sent Littlefinger off on his whatever he's been doing for the past 20 years. I think that was the key moment in his life.
The Great Gatsby.
Pardon?
Like the Great Gatsby. His entire life has been based around this one thing he thinks he can get, a female.
Exactly. And the question that there's also Sansa built the castle, which is imitation again. She's doing the Winterfell, but the tower that Robin broke first, do you think that was the broken tower in Winterfell? I mean, I don't really have a point here aside from the tie-in of Littlefinger saying, and we always build things anew. She kind of already did. I'm assuming that she built Winterfell complete when she made the thing, when she made her castle, rather than the broken tower being already broken.
She wasn't there when it was broken.
Pardon me?
Wasn't there when it was broken.
No, but I think when she was building the tower, her make-believe castle there, I think she would have built the tower as an actual whole rather than a broken version of it that she grew up with. I think she would have had it completed, which I think is the one that Robin broke when he originally started.
I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I just
Interesting.
over it.
Well, it might mirror that broken sword. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
No, and I don't either, and I don't think we really need one. It was just something I questioned in my own head.
Well, how creepy was it when he said, you know, if I had married your mother, you could be my daughter, and I know the non-book readers are going, well, maybe he's not so creepy, and then he plants this kiss on her, and it's like, ah.
Mm.
I have something to say about that scene.
You should wait.
Oh, wait.
Do you think you should wait? Okay. Do you want to go first, James or Eli?
Eli, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
James.
Okay. Mom, do you mind if I knock out other things before you do what you're about to do? Because I know what you're about to do. I'll leave it. Okay. Real quick, random comment. I mentioned that pride is Tyrion's downfall, and he said something. He literally uses the word. Jamie says, "I never thought pride would be your." But he says it earlier. Okay. I think that if you go rewatch this scene, it is apparent that you know what I'm going to say. Sansa killed Joffrey. Robin says, "Where's your moon door?"
Good grief.
Well, what do you do? I missed it.
I said good grief, that's all.
Good grief. He says, "What do you do with your bad people?" Oh, well, we don't deal with them that way. Women aren't involved in that kind of stuff. And then she gets a weird look. And my mom will talk about more about other stuff later that I think also plays into that. But I wanted to ask all. Liza Arryn says, "My father tried to keep us apart. Jon Arryn tried to keep us apart. My sister, and they're all dead. Do you think she had a hand at all in her sister's death? Or, I mean, she obviously sent a letter to her sister. But do you think she had anything to do with her father's death? She poisoned Jon Arryn.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. It's certainly not apparent in the books, but just wanted to bring that up.
But I like you're trying to
Yeah.
It wouldn't help Littlefinger.
Yeah, well, he's one of the only characters who seemed to die of old age in this series, at least from what I recall.
Yeah, well, he had cancer in his belly.
Okay, well, close enough, I guess.
Well, doesn't that sound like something that might have been poisoned? And wouldn't Martin do that kind of thing?
But what would she gain by that, though?
If we were to find out later that Littlefinger, through Lysa, was the reason that Hoster Tully died, then that gives Catelyn a finality for why she would hate Littlefinger. We already have all the justification we need for her to hate Littlefinger, but that would be a nail in the coffin.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
My mom and I were talking the other night about them saying there is no moon door in Winterfell, and the idea that if there is indeed a tunnel between Winterfell and the Greenseer throne at the end of this, then there is kind of a moon door at the end. I also wanted to point out that Littlefinger says, I slapped him. I shouldn't have done that. No, his mother should have. Well, I think it's sincerely possible that Littlefinger is Robin's father, and if that's true, then keep your mouth shut, Peter. You should have been there as your kid. And arguably he's even poisoning Robin, which would be why Robin has issues, and ultimately be why he could come back from his issues, his epilepsy, because once the poison stops, it might stop. Also, I really want to talk about what my mom's going to talk about, but I'm not. I just think that the perfect way to describe Littlefinger, I always described Littlefinger as he wants what he does not have, which is, I think, is a fair assessment. But I love the way he put it in his own words a couple episodes ago. I give up everything to get what I want. And she asks him, what do you want? And he says, everything. He give up whatever he has to get everything he doesn't have. And that includes Sansa. Okay. Mom mentioned this. She's the one who mentioned it. We both talked about it last night. Knock them out of the park, Mama.
Thank you. Before I go there, Joe James, I want to mention something you mentioned. That moon door thing is interesting because if there is indeed some egress into or ingress into that tunnel, whereas things are flying down out of the Erie's moon door, if there's an ice dragon, it's gonna fly up through the ground, which is what I think Robin was kind of foreshadowing. Isn't it dangerous to live on the ground? Which I think is kind of strange anyway, because they lived at King's Landing for a long time. That was kind of a stupid thing for him to say. He was old enough to remember living on the ground, but anyway. What I really want to talk about, folks, is what I've said was going on at Blackwater between Sansa and the Hound. And I think it went on again between she and Peter Baelish. I think she warged Peter Baelish when he kissed her, and she stayed with that kiss because she could see what he was thinking.
And that's why she backs up and goes, and that's why his face is like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, I think I'm
good. Because, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just that, because I did wonder why it took her so long to pull away. So I like that. That's really cool.
I think to a certain extent, too, if I can add to what Mom said, she's partially manipulating him. She's not intending to. She's not got this huge power play. But she's slightly aware of what's going on. And when the kiss occurred, I think that was her getting information out of him. And I also think, now that she said that, it's possible, if you assume that Sansa did it, kill Joffrey, then when she says to Littlefinger, kill Joffrey, well, that's obviously a manipulation on her part, at least in the TV show, because she knows she killed Joffrey. And when he responds, what do we do to those who hurt the ones we love? And she's like, I get it. Obviously, it's painting him as her knight in shining armor, but Joffrey didn't do anything to Cat. What do we do to those who hurt the ones we love? So you kill Joffrey? That doesn't make any sense. It almost implies that he knows that Sansa was involved, and I'm not actually suggesting that, but it certainly fits into the idea one way or another that Sansa killed Joffrey.
Well,
All right, back to what my mom said.
I'm not completely counting that she may have had some hand in it, but I am saying this. I think we're not really seeing who Sansa is. I don't think that neither the reader nor us as HBO show people are seeing who Sansa really is. I think she's putting on an act in a lot of ways, and I think she is biding her time. I think she's coming to learn she's got some power. And Eli, even you said, does she have some spidey sense? Is she overhearing that conversation when Brienne was talking to Jaime? I mean, it was like as soon as they finished, she kind of got up and left like, oh, I'm not hearing that anymore. Something's going on with her that Martin is obfuscating so that we can't get it all at one time.
And he has said in interviews, all the Stark children are wargs.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
I don't know. You know my thoughts on this thing. I think that Sansa will become a manipulative character and will be developed more in lines of what you guys are, especially James, is insinuating. As far as we know about her so far, and as far as that is made clear to me, is that she's not a manipulative character yet. She's learning, but she's not there yet, and that's, I don't know. We have so many POV chapters of Sansa in the books that this idea that you're putting forward never seems to come across, which is something I would find a bit strange if that were indeed the case.
I'll tell you one I'll tell you a very similar one. We were in Ned's in a chapter, weren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever hear him reveal that he knows that Jon Snow is not his child?
It might not be in his mind at the time. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Just saying that I think Martin's showing us what he wants to show us. That's all.
I'm gonna throw something out there that I touched on it a couple moments in my research last week, but what you guys say about Sansa, there are instances where you might even be able to make the same argument with Ned. He has these moments where he takes pauses and even says to people, like to Arya, he says, there are some things you don't need to tell me. The Jon Snow to Bran comment, don't look away or father will know. They're bits. I haven't looked very far into it, but I saw a couple instances.
That's a
my mom was talking about that last night, and you nailed that, Maester Payne. If this is true, then you nailed that. And my mom pointed out, if I may, Mom, Arya says that it's hard to catch a cat, and he says, yes, it is. And my mom was thinking that maybe that meant that they weren't in love initially, but he won her over because through his warging ability, being able to understand what it was she liked and how to, if that makes any sense.
Okay,
certainly a good metaphor for it.
It's definitely something I planned on looking into because I read just a couple things and looking for other stuff, and I was like, holy shit, and going off of what you guys had already said about Sansa, so don't give me credit, that's all you guys.
Well, no, we had not thought about the one you just quoted.
I had not.
So, which one was it? Shit. But you nailed it, whatever it was.
Yeah, the beheading one or the Arya one?
Arya.
No.
Okay, yeah, he says to her, there are some things I don't need to be told, or something like that, yeah.
And he also says, don't look away, father will know. Somebody says that, and I did not think of that either.
I'm not sure how that works.
Collaboration.
That he, in response to my mom's question, that if Ned is beheading somebody, he would be aware of who was looking. And if his son is not looking, he would know he had not looked. Keep looking, or father will know.
That's a good point.
Let me jump in there. I'm sorry. This is the one thing I am going to jump in. I love all you guys' theories and everything, but the one thing you guys do over a lot of times, and this is happening a lot here, is I don't believe that anyone can warg without realizing they're warging and without showing the signs of warging. You know, there's no, I don't think that you're just going to get it secretly, oh, I was warging without realizing it, my bad. You know, I just don't see that ever happening in the story.
I think that's a different
Agreed.
fact. You're taking over a body, you're taking over a thing. If you're just reading somebody's mind, you're not really taking them over, you're just glimpsing into them. So I don't think your eyes would roll back or anything like that.
I also think that it needs to be considered that Martin writes these characters as if they're subverted. Some of the characters' emotions are subverted. Like the Reek chapters we get, he sincerely is hiding that he's Theon. Every time he blocks it, he hides.
But he repeats to himself that he is. But he also says that he is Theon. You know,
Right,
it's not
that he
that he.
isn't.
But just like we talked about Ned's chapter, Ned never says who Jon is, and in fact he refuses to even think about it. And the closest we get is his weird dream and his remembrance, but he refuses to think about it. And if you read the books, if it turns out Sansa is murdering Joffrey, the only way for that to be true is that Sansa is subverting her own mentality. She is hiding who she is to herself, and I think that is what's going on.
I believe you, but oh, go ahead, LaDonna.
I'm going to speak to Eli for a second. I respect your opinion on that, and I understand that. I will tell you that in that book, A Song for Leah, one of those characters can walk through the street as normal as anybody and read people's emotions.
And Martin does a beautiful thing. Martin does a beautiful thing in that story because he tells it from the first-person perspective of the male character who can only read emotions. And the female character, you don't know what she's thinking, but she can read other people's thoughts. So you have to you get the emotions as you're going, and you have to find out later what the thoughts were that were being read.
And I completely understand, and I don't doubt in any way, shape, or form that all the Stark children are capable of warging. But I don't think, and I think that's what the dreams are, is them manifesting that power. But until they use it in real life, like Bran, you can't warg and walk around at the same time. You know, like he has to sit there and, which maybe maybe a Green Seer can. I mean, that gets arguable, but you can't. You know, you have to go into the warging state in order to. You can't just be having a conversation with someone and be warging them without realizing it.
Yeah,
Rob does.
That goes back to the difference between reading minds and warging and controlling bodies.
Well, I think to me it comes down to your ability. The rolling of the eyes, the rolling back of the eyes is totally TV show. They did that so that there could be some way for them to show that they're warging, that it's occurring. So it is entirely possible, in my opinion, for a ward, depending on their power, to be able to walk around and talk and move around and it's like me having a earpiece on and y'all talking to me y'all talking to me somewhere else saying so and so to your left, you got to take a right here and go straight, and me talking to everybody simultaneously. To me, it's totally possible, and it's certainly possible from the Green Seer throne because it has to be possible to a certain extent because through warging you control other things. But isn't it possible Bran can see through his wolf in the books while he's doing other things?
Can he?
He's aware of what's going on. Not that he's controlling his wolf.
Can he do it? Okay.
Well, we just have to wait and see, don't we, folks?
Yeah, we don't fucking know.
Seems to be the case. Although, since we're talking about this whole other, well, we brought up the Green Seer throne, LaDonna, and I was intrigued by that tale you looked up a while ago on Bran the Explorer, I think it was.
Yeah.
The Irish tale. You mentioned this island of women, correct, in that tale? Well, it's funny because in the actual universe of A Song of Ice and Fire, there actually is an island of women where Nymeria stopped on her journey outside of going towards Dorne, of course, and they stopped there for a while. So I kind of thought it was interesting that they actually do have an island that was maybe also borrowed from that same tale. Just want to point that out to you.
Yeah.
Where'd you get your Nymeria info from, Charlie?
I found this on the wiki. I cheated a little bit. The wiki of Ice and Fire.
Could the type of Bravos be Nymeria?
They would have. Wouldn't she have had to have gone there though? I mean, she does look ambiguously. The Titan looks ambiguously female potentially. I agree with you on that. It would be
I'm
an
not
interesting
sure that-
choice for Bravos though if they picked her as their model, considering she went to Dorne and not Bravos, unless she stopped there. But.
One thing I was going to throw in on James's theory of Bronn being the one who brings down the wall, wouldn't it be kind of poetic if it was Bronn the Builder and then Bronn the Destroyer? I mean,
Oh.
Bronn the Wild Wolf in the middle, you know?
Good point.
There is Bran the Burner too, right? Who burned all the Stark ships?
What was the other one called? I knew it.
Bran
I'm
the
sorry.
Burner.
Oh yeah, exactly. See,
I think Bran is going to bring down the wall, but I don't think he's going to do it in his body. I think he's going to warg Hodor, who's a giant, and he's going to blow the horn of Joramun.
I actually reread a part today that said something. It was a Dany chapter, but she said something about the old writers used to control them with spells and enchanted horns, you know. And I was like, oh, I'm starting to think those horns are a little more important than I thought they were. Damn it, you know.
Do you folks have any other thoughts on the last scene?
Go
I'm
rewatch it. That's my last thought. Go rewatch the part where they kiss.
There's some
All
more
I'm saying
yin-yang
is
imagery there too.
What's that?
There's some more yin-yang imagery there too. You'll see the white on one side, the black on the other side, the open door, the closed door. Yeah, that's all. I just noticed the imagery.
What scene was that?
Most of Sansa's parts, you get once where she's walking out this one door, the other one might be a window, possibly a door, looks closed, and then when Liza gets pushed off, you'll see one window is lit up stark white and the other corner is black.
I'm also going to look when she's falling and see what that circular, you know, I've never looked at it looking for that, but I'm going to look when she's falling, you know, because it's a giant circle, and see if I can't find the yin-yang somewhere in there too. You know what I mean?
Check out the horses though. When the second scene with Arya and the Hound, you'll see them. The horses do a part where they're sniffing each other's butts. I think it almost totally replicates the yin yang.
That's cool. That's cool, MP.
That's
I want to know your all's opinion on something.
Go for it.
Are we going to see Liza's head sitting on a rock, decapitated from her body?
It'd be very cool if that were the
I
case.
think so, because she explained it so detailed. I think it's going to be sometime on the wander down, you know, when someone leaves there. And I think you're eventually going to see it because she talked about it.
Definitely hope so. Sort of like Herschel's head in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
I called that, by the way.
Nice.
All right, folks. Well, you know we're going to be off a week.
That's
Oh,
right. That's
devastating.
right. No
Devastating.
Game of Thrones next weekend. Should we go into discussing events of the next episode, however, which happens in 2 weeks from now?
We
Hey.
should.
Again, I haven't watched the trailer, so I'm going to step out for a cigarette.
My
Okay.
question,
I'll
real
get
quick,
back to Dubai, so.
do you guys want to get together next week and just talk theories?
It's all in James and LaDonna's hands. They are the masterminds behind this whole collaboration.
That is a very interesting idea, Eli. I'll have to get back to y'all on that to make
All
sure.
right, yeah, just throwing it out there.
Might be cool in a discussion format for sure. I'd be down for that.
Maybe just take questions. Nothing but answer people's
Hey,
questions.
it's up to you guys.
That might be possible too. Not a bad idea.
Yeah,
It's whatever
sorry.
whatever you guys thought, I'm down.
All right. So
Next episode, we have obviously the duel between the Mountain and the Viper. What else is there? I think we see Moat Caitlin being attacked finally.
Yep.
If I recall.
There's a conversation between Ramsay and Theon.
Right. Theon's going to ride towards it. What else is there?
We get the trial of Peter Baelish.
Right, we have Sansa admitting the truth to something, which will be an interesting occurrence. So I think that's going to be something. I think she's going to like fib for him in some way or other.
The implication there was that she says Littlefinger has lied a lot, and now I feel I must tell the truth. And she's been built up as a liar, in my opinion, as in a good way. But she's going to lie there. The question is, why does she do it?
Exactly.
Well, I really wondered about that in the books. Why didn't she just say, "Oh my God, I'm Catelyn Stark. Please God, take me back home"?
Sansa.
And they've set it up in the book without Marillion there, so.
Why did she do that in the books, folks?
She felt trapped. I think in the TV show they haven't been able to get if she is indeed the manipulator. I think she is. They can't quite get away with her being subverted as much as they can in the books.
Why would she not just say to these people, "I am Sansa Stark, take me home"?
Don't they know, though? I mean, assuming they're plotting with Peter Baelish to arrange a marriage between her and one of their, or whoever the next successor is.
Harry the heir.
The heir, yeah. Wouldn't there be that presumption that they already know who she is?
I guess.
Yeah.
We will get apparently the wildlings are going to be attacking Molestown first. At least that's the implication. And Egert's going to die next episode.
Is that what it's looking like?
It definitely looks like Egert's going to be dying.
Wow, I'm going to kill off 2 characters next episode, Egret and the Viper.
I don't think so, because I don't think Stannis hits the wall yet.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I think they're gonna save her death for like episode 9 or 10.
You might be right about that.
I think it's the Vipers.
It'll be an end of an episode scene.
Yeah.
Like the last thing he sees will be his stunning look, and then the camera will pan up to Ingrid dying or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's shot and killed her or something. I don't know. But I never watched. I was just gonna say, other than that, I don't watch the previews, so I'm out on this conversation.
Okay.
It's all good.
I watch them. I just never get them. I have to find them on YouTube, and I haven't checked yet.
Yeah, that's what I always do on YouTube.
You in the description. I might do that.
I don't have any more thoughts for the future in terms of the next episode. Should we Should we look at questions or?
We should, but there's 131 comments.
Let's answer every single one of them.
They're probably mostly comments as opposed to asking something. I would assume.
It'll be like Danny answering the 212 applicants awaiting.
That we will. Sadly, I am not Danny, so.
I'm trying to read through.
That's what we should do, is all get together on like Fridays and answer everybody's questions.
Q&A Fridays?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in the shadow again.
Oh, there is a poem in Fever Dream and in Martin's book, Armageddon Rag. He fills them with poetry by a bunch of different stuff. There's the Ozymandias by Pierce Bryce Shelley is in there. A bunch of them, but there's one poem by Lord Byron. While I read these questions, there's one. Are you looking at questions, Charlie?
I was just looking through the comments. It's mostly all like just statements as opposed to legit questions.
Let us know when you find one, and I'll do this.
Okay. So you want me to look for the questions then?
Yeah. They didn't really see many that were questions.
Yeah.
But there's one that I think pertains to this. I already mentioned that Ozymandias, I think, plays in, and The Second Coming by Yeats plays in hugely. The Second Coming is huge in this story. But there's a poem by Lord Byron that Martin makes a big deal out of called The Destruction of Sennacherib. that if y'all don't know, you should definitely look up. It's about, it's just awesome, and it definitely relates to this story. I'm gonna see if I can remember it, but that would be kind of.
What's that last word? Destruction of what?
Sennacherib. SENN.
Yeah.
ACHERIB. Let me see if I can remember it. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. I'm gonna look it up because it's damn good.
It's
and
all
y'all
good.
Need to hear it.
I have a question in the meantime if you guys are interested in that. This is from Lucas Kalmar. He says, "Hey guys, just tuned in. Have you discussed the delay of the Kingsmoot and the possibility of Euron being Daario?" Question mark.
I think the Kingsmoot's happening next season, the beginning of next season. Arya, we're gonna get Yara headed back to the Greyjoy Islands, and it's children. The last episode's called Children.
Agreed.
Do you think he means that the character being replaced with Daario, like getting his parts?
I think, yeah, or some kind of association there, them being cut into one.
I doubt that.
Yeah,
Euron's gotta be old. Euron's supposed to be like.
Yeah, too many unique characteristics, I would say that on that point.
Agreed.
Here's the destruction of Sennacherib. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed. And the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved and forever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostril all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride, and the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. And there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail, and the tents were all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpet unblown, and the widows of Ashur are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal. And the might of the gentile, unsmote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord.
I was just curious.
Chilling.
It's fucking epic.
Awesome.
Look it up.
I was to read like that, man.
No, I love it. That's an awesome. I'm sure that George wrote that. I'm sure.
It's by Lord Byron, but George mentions it in his.
Oh, okay. What was the? I'm sorry. It went on so long. What was the relevance that was supposed to have to what we're talking about?
That it has to do with the death of an entire group of. It has to do with God killing an entire army while they're asleep. This huge army comes to kill believers, and it's killed in one night just by sleeping.
And where do you think that plays in?
I think it has I think first of all it has to do with whether there's going to be a genocide at all. But I think it has. First of all, the last line is "hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord," and I don't know whether that's Rolar or. But it's in Fever Dream. He mentions it in Fever Dream 2 or 3 times.
Maybe the death of the White Walkers.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever considered the dragons as like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse?
I have not.
Considering there's only 3, no.
Well,
I get what you. Yeah, there's one missing actor though, right?
Yeah, I just thought of it once thinking about Arya and the pale horse, and I went and looked at the pale horse, and it's actually generally described as green. So that got me into thinking of the 4 horsemen. I haven't gone anywhere with it, but I was just wondering if you guys had ever.
Well,
I started to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, we've addressed the 4 horsemen in one of our videos. You know, it's famine, hunger, war, pestilence. But we're already seeing that playing out. I don't think the dragons are actual metaphors for each one of those particular ways to kill out the human race. I think as a conglomerate, and I think there is another one up north that would make it 4, they're just weapons of mass destruction. They're also mystical. They have, whether they're good or bad depends on what side you're on.
Absolutely.
The one thing I also was going to bring up was the formation of the ice dragon, or whatever, if you want to think about that, was how I think in the mythos it comes from a pond, or at least it dissipates into a pond. And I wondered, like, because I've heard a couple things about that, and I think it was one of your comments, Payne. I'm not 100%, but I think it was you who brought it up, where that he may come from a pond or something like that. But I was thinking, along with what you were saying, along your thoughts, James, of the wall isn't what you think it is, and what if it was the wall? You know what I mean? That was the ice drag, you know, like that type of thing.
It has crossed my mind.
I don't think that was anything I had ever commented on. I've made comments about the pond that's now in Winterfell, like that. It's something after the sack of Winterfell. There's a big wet spot in there somewhere, but I haven't gone so far as to say a dragon came out of there or anything like that yet.
Well, you know,
no, I'm not sure on that. Yeah, I just it was something along the lines of the. I saw it from someone's comments about because I did not remember the tale of the ice dragon turning into just a pond at the end. I did not remember
read the ice dragon, so.
I read the ice dragon. That's not that. I don't want to go there right now. I want to talk to you about something you just mentioned, though, about the water source. You know, Mira even looks down that well and says an underground river, and also when Bran takes wargs Hodor, and goes down into that cave as far as he can go, where Bloodraven is, he hears water down there, if I remember. And by the way, where did all those bones come from that are in that cave? I mean, there was a dragon down there.
It was a lair at one point, you know.
The lair of the white worm.
I'm of the opinion that there is a dragon in that Bloodraven's dragon's egg is in the Green Seer cave, and it has been digging towards Winterfell in order for whoever, the Night's King in my opinion, to take the wall down, go down to Winterfell, and go through to the other side so that he can sit on the Green Seer throne, which is what he's been waiting on for forever. The ice dragon, if there is an ice dragon, comes through Winterfell, it would be like a pool, because he'd be coming through, and there the hot springs would be exposed, whatever remains.
Or you can look at it alternatively, that he has been under Winterfell, which is what made the hot springs, and once they burn down Winterfell, it forces him out towards the Children of the Forest, if that tomb underneath Winterfell goes a long, long, long way.
And you are right, from what I remember, Eli, that the ice dragon, it's not that it turns into water, it's just like it's implied that it turned into water.
Yeah, like there was just a pond left when he was gone, or something like that.
Right.
Which is what happens to the whites when they're stabbed with obsidian, because book readers have called him Puddles, the one that Sam killed, because he doesn't shatter like in the ship. He just melts into water. And Jamie made this reference.
That witch syndrome.
Pardon? Yeah.
That witch syndrome, get thrown water, you turn into a puddle.
Yeah, well, Jamie said this to Jon Snow. You know, have you ever really been up close personal and killed somebody? He said, because when you cut through them, you realize they're just water and bones. And even Syrio says that to Arya. You know, the dance, that we're just made out of water.
Yeah, poke them and they leak. Yep.
All right. I wanted to add that Darkness by Lord Byron is another poem you should definitely read. It's a much longer one, but Darkness by Lord Byron is one he also mentions repeatedly.
All right, folks, I've got to go.
Me too.
Likewise, it's getting a bit late.
Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much. And all to the viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. We've still got people watching. Y'all are amazing. Hopefully we can still reply to your comments that were made before this, but we will be replying to comments.
Absolutely. Just ask them again if we cannot access the comments that you've already made. Again, thanks, James, LaDonna, for organizing this, and thanks, obviously, Eli and Maester Payne for being here, where the whole crew is here. Great stuff, great times, as always, and thanks for organizing this. It would not be possible without James and LaDonna here, of course. So thanks to you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me again, you guys.
Our pleasure. And
yeah, I'll be answering questions all week long in the comments and stuff. So.
Thank you, Eli.
Alrighty, folks. Take care.
Y'all too.
Have a good one, guys. Had a blast. Had a blast.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Absolutely.
Night.
Good night, guys.
Night. Bye, Mama.
Love
Love you.
Love you too. Good night.
Night.